Chapter 3085. Outside the canyon, Chen Bei's arm was broken, but the Yishin's dragon-subduing gauntlet wasn't damaged in the slightest. Blood flowed freely as he retreated several thousand meters, all the way out of the canyon. If this wasn't the world of virtuous paragons, the entire canyon would have been destroyed. Thud, thud, thud. The rocks beneath Chen Bei's feet were crushed, and his leg bones were twisted. Even after retreating so far, he still knelt down. Yi Qinghan deliberately retreated more than 10 steps to hide his true strength. He didn't want Sidu Gang to suspect that someone could defeat an ancestor with innate physical strength. Sidu Gang took a deep breath, his fingertips trembling. How is this possible? Innate divine strength? Even father's son might not be able to do this. Situ Gang muttered to himself with a trembling voice. Inside and outside the canyon, there was a deathly silence. There were still many people standing outside the canyon. They had wanted to leave through the canyon, but they had been blocked outside and had just witnessed this punch. Chen Bei, ranked 5th among the top 10 youths of the Yishin world, had been defeated with a single punch and even knelt on the ground. This had never happened before. Chen Bei was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His eyes were bloodshot, and his right hand was crippled. He couldn't even lift it. Impossible! How can there be such a freakish physical body? He didn't use any law power, and I actually lost to an idiot. Chen Bei raised his head slightly, his eyes filled with death. His Dao heart had collapsed, and his battle intent and killing intent had dissipated. Without a miracle, he was destined to become a cripple. Chen Bei looked at the distant Yi Qinghan. He wasn't injured, and his foolish eyes and victorious smile were filled with despair. At this time, Supremacy Yi and Sidu Xuetong returned to the canyon and stood beside Yi Qinghan. Sidu Xuetong looked at this scene and re-evaluated Yi Qinghan's strength. His peak strength probably far surpasses ordinary sages. No wonder he could save the world. Sidu Xuetong muttered to herself, and the admiration in her eyes grew stronger, but it disappeared in a flash. Huff, huff, huff. Only the sound of rapid breathing could be heard in the canyon. Although Yi Qinghan looked like an idiot, his appearance was even more handsome than Chen Bei's. Only the idiocy in his eyes ruined his temperament. Otherwise, he would have been a hero of a generation. Situ Gang stood in the distance and observed carefully, his brows furrowed. Is this person really a fool? Look at the majesty between his brows. If his eyes were covered, I dare say that none of the 10 great heroes in the world would be his match. Sidu Gang muttered to himself. If his daughter, Sidu Xuetang, was so good at reasoning, how could his intelligence be weak? Phew! Si Gang exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and muttered to himself, it seems that I have to ask the divine alchemist elder to take action. At the very least, I have to find out if this person's soul is seriously injured and if he is truly an idiot. At this time, Sidu Gang's figure flashed and appeared in the valley. He looked majestic as he stared at Yi Qinghan and Sidu Xue. Take them to the Situ estate. I'm going to see the alchemy elder. Sidu Xuetong was overjoyed. She quickly bowed and said, Thank you, father. Sidu Gang didn't say much. He turned and walked out of the valley. He helped Chen Bei up and whispered, Nephew Chen Bei, victory and defeat are common in war. Don't let this ruin your Dao heart. I dare not say that I can defeat this person. Besides, you are still young. If you become the Sacred Lord's personal disciple in the future, defeating him is only a matter of time. If you give up now, you won't be able to beat him even if you use 100 words. Chen Bei took a deep breath and stood up with trembling legs. He bowed and said, Uncle, thank you for your advice. I understand. Don't worry. What is yours will always be yours. If it is not yours, you can't take it away. Let nature take its course. We will know within 3 years. Xuetang is indeed fond of talent. Do you understand? Situ Gang reminded him in a low voice. In fact, the Situ family has recognized you as a son-in-law from the beginning. I hope you won't disappoint me. Chen Bei became excited when he heard this. He bowed and said, Uncle, don't worry. I won't give up. I will return this punch within 3 years. Sidu Gang was also a very smart person. Chen Bei was one of the personal disciples that the Sacred Lord was evaluating. Even if they couldn't become family in the future, he didn't want to be enemies with Chen Bei. I will go see the medicine god elder. You go back and calm down. Don't go looking for Shui Tang. At least, don't do it for now. It won't do you any good, Sidu Gang whispered. With Sidu Gang's support, Chen Bei's confidence increased greatly. At least, he calmly looked at Sidu Xuetong and immediately left. Bush. After Chen Bei left, Sidu Gang sped up and rushed to the sacred mountain. On the sacred mountain, the medicine god's government peak was filled with immortal herbs. The spirit chi here was almost the best. Perhaps even the sacred lord's peak was inferior. In the medicine god's hall, a white-haired old man was refining pills. A medicine cauldron was filled with patterns. The fragrance inside filled the air. The sacred medicine was about to be born. This was the medicine god's best pill, the Heaven Sage pill. It was a sage-level pill that specialized in repairing the soul of sages. It was priceless. Every Heaven Sage pill had a price but no market. The medicine god's white hair fluttered without wind. He formed a seal with both hands. The heavenly fire in the cauldron became gentle and the pill quickly condensed. As soon as the divine pill was formed, it began to erupt with pressure. The chi rushed into the galaxy and a vision appeared. Sidu Gang entered the medicine god's peak and knew that the medicine god was condensing the pill. He didn't dare to disturb him and waited outside the hall. About an hour later, the medicine god walked out with a smile. He was in a good mood because this Heaven Sage pill was more perfect. Nephew Situ, what brings you here today? The medicine god asked with a smile. Situ Gang's father, Situ Yu, and the medicine god were brothers in the same sect, so they had a good relationship. Situ Gang hurriedly bowed and replied, Uncle Medicine God, I'm here today to ask for a favor. I'm in a good mood today. Just say what you need, the medicine god replied with a smile. Situ Gang immediately replied, Uncle Medicine God, a very special guest came to our house. His soul was injured. Your disciple, the medicine master, personally took action, but he couldn't repair his soul. The key is that this person was born with divine strength. He didn't use any law or order power and only relied on his physical body to defeat me. So I'd like to ask you to treat him. It's a pity if such a talent is wasted. I don't know if you have the time, so I didn't dare to bring him here directly. The medicine god was surprised when he heard this. He knew Sidu Gang's strength very well. It was unbelievable that he could defeat him with just his physical body. Interesting. I've never seen such a weirdo. Bring him here and let me see, the medicine god said with a smile. Situ Gang was overjoyed when he heard this. He hurriedly thanked the medicine god and left the medicine god's peak. Chapter 3086. In the main hall of the Situ residence, only Yi Qinghan, Supreme Yi, and Situ Xuetong were waiting anxiously. Today, Situ Gang's group would determine whether he could ascend the sacred mountain and determine the location of the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. Yi Qinghan looked at the entrance of the main hall. He was very nervous and kept breathing deeply. His eyes stared into the distance and his consciousness wandered. As soon as Situ Gang returned, he would find him. Brother Yi, don't worry. My father has a good relationship with the divine alchemist elder. The main thing is that my grandfather is his brother. My father's advancement to the sage realm is already set in stone because the divine alchemist elder agreed to help, Situ Xuetong said firmly. Yi Qinghan laughed at himself. He did not expect that his state of mind was still not enough. When it came to such a big matter, he could not calm down. However, it did not take long for Situ Gang to return to the Situ residence. Yi Qinghan immediately retracted his aura. The dullness in his eyes reappeared. Even a sage would not notice that there was a wound in the depths of his soul. Divine bird, don't go. I'll go to the sacred mountain myself, Yi Qinghan ordered firmly. Wherever the divine bird went, there would be chaos. Even Yi Qinghan could not keep an eye on it. It could cause a big problem at any time. Supreme Yi shrugged and rolled his eyes. He slumped in his chair, bored and helpless. He still wanted to go to the sacred mountain to get some good stuff. Yi Qinghan's decision was obviously the best. If Supreme Yi went, it would be easy to expose the problem. Sidhu Gang appeared in the main hall and looked at Yi Qinghan with a dignified face. There was a little satisfaction in his eyes, but there were also many doubts and vigilance. If Yi Qinghan's identity was not a problem, he would definitely be the ideal son-in-law. With such divine power and first-class appearance, there was nothing to be picky about. Yi Qinghan, come with me. I'll take you to the sacred mountain to see the divine alchemist elder, Sidhu Gang said seriously. Sidhu Xuetong was overjoyed and quickly said, Father, I'll go too. His soul is injured and he can't differentiate between friend and foe. If I go, he won't be disrespectful to the medicine god elder. Sidhu Gang frowned slightly. Yi Qinghan was too strong. If he suddenly went berserk and beat up the divine medicine elder, it would be a disaster. Okay. Sidhu Gang nodded and agreed to Sidhu Xuetong's request. Sidhu Xuetong looked at Supreme Yi and said softly, Supreme Yi, stay in the mansion. Ask the servants for whatever you want to eat, but don't cause any trouble. It wouldn't be good if you disturb grandfather. Supreme Yi licked the corner of his mouth and nodded repeatedly. Before Yi Qinghan left, he gave Supremacy Yi a warning and secretly transmitted his voice. No matter what treasure you see, you have to endure it. Right now, nothing is more important than the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. Sovereign Yi didn't dare to disobey Yi Qinghan's decision and could only agree. Let's go, Sidhu Gang said calmly. Clatter, clatter. The three of them left the Sidhu estate. Sidhu Gang, Yi Qinghan, and Sidhu Xuetong's figures flickered. In an instant, they were 1,000 miles away, not far from Ho Yi's statue at the foot of the sacred mountain. After arriving, no one dared to fly. Everyone respectfully paid their respects and walked towards the sacred mountain. Yi Qinghan looked up at the giant statue of Ho Yi. It was holding a giant bow with a domineering aura that could pierce through the firmament. The reverence in his heart grew stronger and stronger. After bowing to the statue for a bit, the three walked towards the holy mountain. The holy mountain was towering and shrouded in immortal mist. Immortal trees stood side by side, shrouded in purple energy. This was a rare paradise. This sacred mountain wasn't just one mountain, it was actually surrounded by nearly 100 peaks. There were more than 30 main peaks, and each peak had a sage presiding over it. The sages here were either Ho Yi's children or inheritors, so they had high statuses. The master of the main peak was Ho Yi's grandson. One of the previous two masters had died in battle. The first sage had left God Yi's realm and had yet to return. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Medicine God Peak was the sixth main peak in the southwest of Sacred Master Peak. It was densely covered with formations and experts. Strangers couldn't even get close to the foot of the mountain. Moreover, there was more than one sage overseeing this place. Medicine God Elder Bu En had many experts and a few of them had become sages. In order to repay his kindness, they stayed at Medicine God Peak to protect him. Yi Qinghan followed Sidhu Gang into the vicinity of Medicine God Peak. Before his divine sense spread out, he sensed no less than 3 sages and no less than 10 peak progenitor experts. They were all extremely low-key and hid in all directions of Medicine God Peak. Their auras were indistinct. If it wasn't for his powerful soul, he probably wouldn't have noticed any of them. The little white cloud enveloped his body and strengthened his soul by dozens of times. It was stronger than the souls of the sages. Hiss! Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and spirit energy drilled into his body. It was vast and majestic, and the immortal energy almost turned into liquid. Immortal realm! Yi Qinghan secretly muttered. He was shocked by the virtuous paragon world. This place was many times stronger than his own wild martial world. Sidhu Xuetong was also excited. This was a treasure ground and she couldn't enter that many times. He calmly said, "Tell me your purpose, or you might not be able to leave the Medicine God Peak today." Yi Qinghan waved his hand and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow replica appeared in his hand. His aura suddenly rose and angrily rushed into the galaxy. It instantly affected the entire sacred mountain and alarmed countless experts. More than 30 peak lords instantly came out of seclusion, including the sacred lord. They opened their eyes and walked out to stare at the Medicine God Peak. Yi Qinghan held the immortal bow with both hands and directly offered it. Bang! The medicine god elder and Sidhu Gang directly knelt down. They did not dare to take the immortal bow. This bow was too similar to the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. Yi Qinghan dodged, not daring to let the two kneel in front of him. This immortal bow is a replica of Father God's sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. It came from the third planet of the 9-star field's virtuous paragon. That ancestor fought side by side with Father God, so he was able to replicate this immortal weapon. This also proves that Yi Qinghan truly came from the third planet. This, the medicine god gasped. He even thought that the immortal weapon in Yi Qinghan's hand was the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. This was why he knelt down. He had only seen the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow once during the first battle against the outsiders. Although it was just a glimpse, it was enough to remember for 100 generations. The medicine god elder stood up and stared at Yi Qinghan with disbelief in his eyes. Bang! At this moment, Sidhu Shuatang knelt down and respectfully said, "Shuatang knows her mistake. A few days ago, little brother Yi came to find me and hoped that I could bring him to see the medicine god. At first, I didn't believe little brother Yi, but he shared his soul with me and gave his life to me. Only then did I understand what happened. Medicine god elder, little brother Yi is telling the truth. A world-ending war is about to happen in the outer realm, so little brother Yi came to ask for the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow, Father God's weapon. Only Father God's sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow can stop this world-ending calamity." Hearing this, Sidhu Gang became furious and angrily rebuked. "Shuang, how dare you betray Yi Shinshan? Betraying the Yi Shinshan realm." Chapter 3088. In the main hall of Medicine God Peak, Sidhu Gang was furious and wanted to kill Sidhu Shui. Betraying the Yi divine realm was a taboo that could easily lead to the destruction of a clan. Whoosh! Sidhu Gang moved extremely fast and wasn't just for show. A palm print appeared in front of Sidhu Shuatang's forehead. Boom! Yi Qinghan waved his hand in front of Sidhu Shuatang and sent Sidhu Gang flying with a dazzling radiance. "Patriarch Sidhu, there's no need to be angry. Miss Shuatang didn't betray the Yi divine realm or Yi Shinshan, nor did she betray Godfather. She was trying to save Yi Shinshan and Godfather. She didn't want Godfather to leave with regrets," Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. "Nonsense!" Sidhu Gang was furious. Sidhu Shuatang had betrayed Yi Shinshan, a great crime. He had to clean house. Yi Qinghan stood firmly in front of the terrified Sidhu Shuang. He stared at the divine medicine elder and said, "Father has already died in battle. You should know why. I don't believe that Yi Shinshan has no record of why he died. You can go to the main peak and ask to see if I'm lying. If I don't get the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow, then in 10,000 years at most, all the sages' worlds, including the primal universe, will be destroyed. Shuatang is doing this out of kindness. You will understand in the future." The medicine god was silent. His smile finally disappeared and his expression turned solemn. At that moment, 3 figures appeared on the medicine god peak. They were all from the main peak. All 3 of them wore white robes and held divine crossbows in their hands. They were similar to the imitation divine crossbows in Yi Qinghan's hands. They were the Sacred Lord, Grand Elder, and Second Elder. These 3 were the top experts of the Yishan realm, especially the Saint Master. He looked to be in his 60s, and even his hair and brows were white. His eyes were filled with dignity and wisdom. He was the most knowledgeable about history, and at first glance, he saw the imitation immortal bow in Yi Qinghan's hand. He could tell that the immortal bow was an imitation and not the real sun-shooting immortal exterminating bow. "Sacred Lord, elders, you came at the right time," this person said. The medicine god immediately said. The Sacred Lord nodded and said calmly, "What he said is the truth, but this person's identity has yet to be confirmed." Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, someone who understood history had arrived. "Greetings, Senior. Junior is Yi Qinghan, from the Primal Universe's 3rd planet. I have been entrusted by virtuous Paragon Yuzun to ask the descendants of virtuous Paragon Ho-E ancestor to heavily injure the 9 paragons and even eliminate them at all costs. Yi Qinghan cupped his fists and said, Virtuous Yuzun? The sacred master's brows furrowed. He knew this name. It was an existence of the same generation as the Divine Father, someone of boundless merit and virtue. Where is great sage Yuzun? The sacred lord cupped his fists and asked. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and replied in a serious tone, Virtuous Paragon Yuzun has fallen. He used up all of his merit points in life to lay down the 9 cauldrons formation to suppress the 9 paragons for countless years. In the end, he couldn't outlast the 9 of them. Before his death, he told me to take care of the 9 paragons. With just you? You haven't even stabilized your position as a paragon, so how are you going to suppress the 9 paragons of the secondary universe? The sacred master asked in a serious tone. Sigh, Yi Qinghan sighed and said helplessly, the virtuous paragons of the 3rd planet are past their prime, and there aren't many of them left. I can only be pushed to the front. I don't want to face this kind of situation, but there's no other way. Although we're at a disadvantage, it's not like we can't win. I have 2 friends who are about to enter the virtuous paragon realm. One of them has obtained the recognition of the secondary universe, while the other has been tainted with Ancestor Yellow Emperor's merit points and has obtained the recognition of the ruler's energy origin. Becoming a virtuous paragon is just around the corner. Although I haven't entered the virtuous paragon realm, my strength is far beyond that of an ordinary paragon. If I fuse with my divine pet, becoming a virtuous paragon isn't impossible. The sacred master pondered for a moment and said indifferently, So what if the 3 of you become virtuous paragons? 3 against 9, what will you use to fight? Yi Qinghan frowned and looked at the sacred master. It was clear that he didn't want to fight and only wanted peace. Are we going to give up? Everything Father and the others have done will be for naught? If we give up, the original universe will collapse, and those below the secondary universe ancestor level won't be able to survive. Yishan sector might be remote, but it's definitely not a saint realm. We can be found at any time. Yi Qinghan reminded in a low voice. I've traveled across the universe to find the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow just to break the current situation. Back then, virtuous Paragon Ho-E relied on the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow to heavily injure 9 virtuous paragons. Don't tell me his descendants don't even have the heart to fight? Impudent! Great Elder glared at Yi Qinghan and was about to attack Yi Qinghan. However, the sacred master stopped him and shook his head slightly. He calmly said, It's not that we don't dare to fight, but that the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow is no longer in Yishan sector. What? Yi Qinghan was shocked. The immortal bow in his hand trembled slightly, and godly light shot out in all directions. Yishan sector has had 2 major wars. The first time, my ancestor relied on the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow to destroy the invaders. However, he left Yishan sector with the bow not long after. Since then, there has been no news of him. The whereabouts of the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow are also unknown. Sacred Master sighed. Yi Qinghan took several steps back dispiritedly and sat down powerlessly on the chair. Looking at the Sacred Master's expression, he knew that his hopes were dashed again. May I ask if the first-generation Sacred Master is dead or alive? Yi Qinghan asked hoarsely. The Sacred Master nodded. The only thing he could be sure of was that his grandfather, Ho Yi's son, was still alive. His life tablet is not broken. He's still alive, the Sacred Master said solemnly. Who? Yi Qinghan let out a sigh of relief. If his ancestor was still alive, it would be easy to find the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow. Senior, thank you for your guidance. Yi Qinghan stood up and cupped his fists. The Sacred Master shook his head and said indifferently, You've been guided, but I hope to find out your identity before you leave Yishan sector. If there's no problem with your identity, then my Yishan sector and you can be considered to be of the same origin. We won't make things difficult for you. Yi Qinghan frowned. He couldn't afford to waste any time. How do you want to find out? Yi Qinghan asked. The Sacred Master gestured with his hand, Give me the immortal bow first. It has a spirit, so I can naturally communicate with it. Yi Qinghan frowned and pondered for a moment. This sacred master was Ho Yi's subordinate after all. He wouldn't do something that would make his enemies happy. Senior, please communicate with it. This immortal bow indeed has a spirit. Yi Qinghan offered the immortal bow with both hands. The sacred master took the immortal bow and stroked it with both hands. His bloodline was very pure. Although it wasn't equivalent to Ho Yi's bloodline, the compatibility between his bloodline and the immortal bow was far superior to Yi Qinghan's. Once the immortal bow was in the sacred master's hand, its light became even brighter. Its pressure soared to the sky and pressed against the dome. The immortal light enveloped the sacred master and the immortal bow. They were in harmony with each other and their souls became one. This was a connection between their souls. The sacred master could control this immortal bow with just a thought. The sacred master walked out of the medicine god peak with the immortal bow. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Ho Yi's statue. He knelt on the ground and offered the immortal bow with both hands. Supreme Father, please tell your descendant what to do. The sacred master knelt on the ground and was extremely respectful. Chapter 3089. The sacred lord prostrated himself respectfully. He held the immortal bow with both hands and prayed for Ho Yi's instructions. The huge statue was 1,000 feet tall and looked extremely majestic. It had always been in a calm state, receiving the blessings and reverence of the world all year round. He was only a middle-aged man, but he was even more revered than Zhang Daoling and the Grand Supreme Elder. From afar, his eyes were lifelike as though they were alive. Anyone who looked at them would be immersed in them. His clothes were as white as snow, and the patterns were clear. It was indescribably elegant. The huge bow in his hand could pierce the heavens, and the huge arrow could touch the clouds. The sacred lord held the immortal bow replica and emitted immortal might. At that moment, under the statue, a divine light shot out. Ho Yi's statue seemed to be coming to life. The divine light from the immortal bow stimulated the statue's majesty. Two different divine lights intertwined as the immortal bow was pulled into the sky. The statue was alive. Yes, at that moment, the statue moved and directly pulled the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow replica into his hand. It happened in a flash. Some even thought that it was an illusion. Even the sacred lord thought that the immortal bow flew into the statue's hand and not the statue taking the initiative to grab the immortal bow. Although the immortal bow was a replica, it was bursting with divine might. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and appeared under the statue. At that moment, he seemed to have noticed that the statue was moving. It had taken the initiative to take the immortal bow, but he was not sure. He even thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Sidu Gang and Sidu Shuatong appeared under the statue and knelt respectfully on the ground. They did not dare to blaspheme. Yi Qinghan also knelt on one knee and silently waited for Ho Yi's statue's instructions. The statue of Ho Yi bore the sacrifices and blessings of countless living beings. Every city in the world had a statue, and the statues were all connected to each other. The blessings received by the other smaller statues would gather in this huge statue, and it would definitely become a god. Although it was not a true descendant, it had its own consciousness. The statue moved and slowly squatted down. It held the immortal bow in one hand. It had communicated with the immortal bow's immortal soul and already knew everything. Ho Yi's statue placed its huge hand in front of Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan was not even the size of its palm. His finger was only the size of a finger. Sand and dust were gently stirred up and shot in all directions. Yi Qinghan, I'm very gratified that you're willing to take on this responsibility. Back then, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors joined forces, but they either died or were injured. The rest are already in their twilight years. Now, we can only rely on you. The majestic voice boomed like thunder. Yi Qinghan was trembling all over. He raised his head slightly to look at the sculpture of Ho Yi. His eyes were filled with disbelief. You are very surprised, but let me tell you, I'm not a god. It's just that my soul hasn't perished. All that's left is a wisp of my soul. It's gathered in the sculpture, using the sculpture and endless merit of faith to live. Do you understand now? Ho Yi said in a deep voice. bang. At this moment, Yi Qinghan got down on both knees and raised both hands to hold the immortal bow. He respectfully said, "Descendant Yi Qinghan understands. I'm willing to go through fire and water to fulfill your unfinished wish." Ho Yi's statue faintly smiled and said with a hoarse voice, "I've waited for this day for many years. The first time an outsider came, it was because of greed. The second time, it was also because of greed. But you came for the sake of the common people and even obtained the 10-arrow art. This is fate and fortune. This is all I can do." Endless merit and holy light gushed out from Ho Yi's statue. This was the power of a virtuous paragon. It all poured into Yi Qinghan's sea of memories. Yi Qinghan's limbs and bones surged. The power of a virtuous paragon roared, and the merit of a virtuous paragon filled his body. Endless memories swarmed in. Even the last wisp of Ho Yi's soul turned into the insights of a virtuous paragon and was sent into Yi Qinghan's sea of memories. The pain caused him to roar incessantly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The immortal bow vibrated as a boundless immortal light pierced through the dome. The memories of the 10-arrow art were all awakened. A virtuous paragon didn't forget his original goal even in death and helped Yi Qinghan reach the pinnacle of this art. In the blink of an eye, Yi Qinghan and the immortal bow's compatibility reached perfection. At this moment, even if the sunshot immortal vanquishing bow appeared in person, it would still have a perfect compatibility with the bow. I know that there was no way to kill the 9 virtuous paragons back then, but I also hope that you can fulfill my wish and use the sunshot immortal vanquishing bow to end them and reform the reincarnation cycle so that you can rule over everything. These words appeared in Yi Qinghan's sea of memories before disappearing without a trace. The last trace of virtuous paragon Ho Yi also disappeared. The statue was still half-squatting, but it no longer had any aura or power fluctuations. It had turned into a pure statue. "Godfather!" The sacred lord and the elders mourned while Sidu Gang and Sidu Shuetong had tears running down their cheeks. Yi Qinghan was silent and didn't speak for a long time. This was a true virtuous paragon. For the sake of his original heart, he didn't even give himself the last bit of hope. As long as the common people could continue, that was enough. This state of mind was not something an ordinary person could achieve. "I will never be able to do this." Yi Qinghan kneeled on the ground with complicated emotions in his eyes. Indeed, the gap between him and a virtuous paragon was like the distance between heaven and earth. He could be fearless for the sake of the insane faction, but he couldn't be fearless for the sake of the common people. However, this was no longer important. He already had Ho Yi's virtuous paragon merit on top of the insane faction's army outside. Thus, he was now at the virtuous paragon realm and had the power of a virtuous paragon. He had inherited the most essential part of Ho Yi's power, the 10-arrow art. Below the sacred mountain, the wind stopped blowing. Countless experts were alarmed. No one expected this to happen. Even Qinbei's group appeared below the sacred mountain. They looked at Yi Qinghan kneeling on the ground with the bow in his hand and were speechless for a long time. Whoosh! Supreme Yi appeared next to Yi Qinghan and cautiously stared at everyone. "Boss, have we been exposed?" he whispered. Yi Qinghan nodded, then he shook his head and replied with a hoarse voice, "Virtuous paragon Ho Yi has come back to life. He gave me the purest inheritance. Right now, as long as I have the sunshot immortal vanquishing bow, I can crush 9 paragons." You've become a virtuous paragon?" Supreme Ye's eyes narrowed as he looked at Yi Qinghan's ethereal realm with surging smoke. The aura of a virtuous paragon was calm and heavy. "Yes, it's done," Yi Qinghan quietly murmured. This realm was achieved by stepping on the life of virtuous paragon Ho Yi. The responsibility on his shoulders was heavy and heavy. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and slowly stood up. He looked at the experts and elders kneeling on the ground and solemnly said, "I'm going to fulfill Godfather's wish. If I see the first sacred lord, ask him to send the sunshot immortal vanquishing bow to the heaven-suppressing prefecture of the ancient immortal world. I need it for the final battle." The sacred lord and the elders finally calmed down and looked at Yi Qinghan. "Also, Sidu Shuetang is not a traitor. She is saving us. Do not make things difficult for her. Otherwise, I will punish you in the name of God Father, Yi Qinghan said sternly as he swept his gaze over the crowd. The sacred lord stood up and bowed. Your Excellency, you are now the successor of God Father. Your words represent God Father. We won't blame Situ Xuetong and will even reward her. Yi Qinghan nodded with satisfaction. He looked at Situ Xuetong and asked, Do you want to stay in God Yi's world or go outside to take a look? I respect your decision. However, I can tell you that the primal universe is very dangerous right now. Situ Xuetong's eyes lit up. She had never given up on her savior mentality. Your Excellency, please take me out. I will represent God Father's descendant in this battle. I won't regret it even if I die. She firmly said. Chapter 3090. Situ Xuetong understood Yi Qinghan and the crazy mansion, so she knew the meaning behind her words. Not just anyone could say that they would die without regret. Even if they said it, they might not be able to do it. Yi Qinghan looked at her and gently sighed. He had promised her before, so it was time to take her out. However, once they left the E-Divine realm, everyone could die in the final battle. Clan Master Situ, are you willing to let your daughter go? Yi Qinghan asked with a serious tone. Situ Gang hesitated for a moment. In the end, Situ Xuetong was his favorite daughter. If he let her go, the chances of her coming back alive would be too slim. However, Yi Qinghan was the successor chosen by God Father. Even the last strand of God Father's soul was given to him. In the future, Yi Qinghan would definitely surpass virtuous paragons. Situ Gang's eyes flashed as he bowed and said, I will listen to esteemed master's command. Situ Xuetong's decision is mine. Yi Qinghan nodded and looked at the sacred lord. He cupped his fists and said, Senior, I have a request. Please take Dong Yuan from the Eastern Barbarian tribe as a closed-door disciple. Just who was the sacred lord? Only the top geniuses would be accepted as disciples. Even Dong Qing and Qin Bei were only considered. Dong Yuan was only at the golden immortal level. The sacred lord didn't know this name. He frowned and looked at the elders around him. Who is Dong Yuan? Senior brother, sacred lord. She is the youngest daughter of Dong Yichen from the Eastern Barbarian tribe. She is at the eternal golden immortal level with decent talents. Her only fame is that she is ranked 6th in the E-Divine realm, the same as Situ Xueng. An elder immediately stepped forward and answered. The sacred lord might be old, but he wasn't stubborn. He immediately knew that Yi Qinghan owed her a favor and came to him to repay it. Esteemed master, since you have spoken, I have no choice but to agree. Take her in as a closed-door disciple. The sacred lord laughed. Yi Qinghan chuckled and cupped his fists again. Then this junior will take his leave. I have been away from the primal universe for so long and don't know what is going on outside. I am quite anxious. I hope seniors will forgive me. Yi Qinghan said in a low tone. The elders wanted to talk to Yi Qinghan and learn more about the primal universe, but they didn't expect him to leave, so they wanted to urge him to stay, of a paragon's laws and the power of the universe. The power was Tu's. To. Paragons to. In. To be Tu's, his. Everyone farewell. Yi Qinghan cupped his fists and said. He reached out and took Situ Xuetong away. His figure flashed and left the E-God realm. He went into the virtuous paragon's spatial ring and appeared in the primal chaos outside. The spear and the breeze sword were still there. No one had touched them. Yi Qinghan took off Ho Yi's spatial ring and put it on. With a thought, the two rings fused into one and took away the spear and the sword. Situ Xuetong didn't pay attention to anything else. She only looked at Ho Yi's corpse and respectfully kowtowed several times. Yi Qinghan sighed softly and said in a deep voice, I want to bring his body back to the third planet so that he can rest in peace. But Situ Xuetong nodded repeatedly. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and placed Ho Yi's corpse on his back. His left hand grabbed Situ Xuetong's hand and said, This place is very dangerous. Hold on to me. No matter what you see, don't panic or become greedy. Situ Xuetong chose to trust Yi Qinghan unconditionally and held Yi Qinghan's hand with both hands. Whoosh, Yi Qinghan gazed into the distance. They passed through the garbage dump and reversed the black holes. It was as if they had entered the reincarnation cycle. The power of a virtuous paragon could twist and reverse all things. They stepped through the black holes and spatial rifts to return to the original universe. Both the primal and secondary universes were in chaos. On one hand, they were looking for the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao. On the other, they were suppressing the chaos and stabilizing the situation. The sacred grounds and superpowers were restless and wanted to compete with insane manner. However, no one dared to take the lead. Although the remaining virtuous paragons wanted to, they didn't have the courage to do so. Gu Qingyu, Heaven's equal monkey monarch, and Elegant Leaf, these three experts became virtuous paragons. In the past, they won a drinking contest and borrowed the ruler's power to become a virtuous paragon. The moment they became virtuous paragons, they became invincible and intimidated the three subworlds. Thus, Insane Manor's name was like the sun at noon. Jian Bugui and Flame King, who were hiding in the shadows, quietly rose in this chaotic world and became virtuous paragons with boundless merit. Flame King activated the Yellow Emperor's merit and became a virtuous paragon. With a wave of his will, he could control the power of the universe. The two of them completely grasped the power of virtuous paragons and came out of seclusion to train the experts of Insane Manor. They used their own experience to support Yan Yunbei, Mu Zhuang, Shige, Yi Chenxing, Li Peiza, and Hua Lingtian, allowing them to reach the virtuous paragon realm. Ultimate Saint Thieving didn't need anyone else and became a virtuous paragon on his own. He was the first person in recent years to obtain a ruler's power. The moment he became a virtuous paragon, he was overjoyed and wanted to trample over the old virtuous paragons to steal their treasures. However, before Yi Qinghan's return, a terrifying event occurred in 9-Star Realm. The 9 stars aligned and the heaven and earth were in chaos. The sky was dyed red as if it was dyed by blood. The 9 Cauldrons Grand Formation emitted a boundless brilliance. Its terrifying aura caused the world to be filled with lightning and rain. Fan Shen didn't care and only felt that the weather wasn't good. However, Zhang Daoling was scared witless. The divine cauldron on the 4th planet didn't have a ruler's origin since it had been stolen by the divine bird's father. Because the cauldron contained no sovereign essence energy, it caused the 9 Cauldrons formation to become unstable. The cauldron was overturned, and a fiendish figure crawled out from within. He looked like a skeleton, and his fingers were nothing more than skin and bones. Boom! The corpse-like person crawled out of the abyss and stepped on the cauldron. His eyes were eerie and incomparably dark. His body was filled with killing intent, causing the phenomena in the heaven and earth to become even more terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dark clouds covered the heaven and earth, making it impossible to see one's own fingers. The starry sky had disappeared long ago. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as heavy rain poured down. The 9 Cauldrons Grand Formation was broken and the divine cauldron tilted as people continuously crawled out from 9-Star Realm. The 9 virtuous paragons had come out. Countless years of suppression had caused them to be filled with hatred. The first thing they did when they came out was to stare at the 3rd planet with murderous intent. "I'm out again." The hoarse voice seemed to come from the depths of hell, causing one's hair to stand on end. On the 3rd planet, the Taoist mountain collapsed. Zhang Daoling held an oil paper umbrella on top of the mountain and saw a divine cauldron appear under the cracked mountain. He knew that it was too late. Chapter 3091. On the 3rd planet, Taoist Mountain was split into 2. A demon escaped and stared at Zhang Daoling with cold eyes. With a swipe of its sharp claws, the 3rd planet, which was devoid of order, was distorted. Zhang Daoling couldn't even escape and was refined alive. His originally withered flesh began to glow, but Zhang Daoling's eyes were lifeless and he had lost all signs of life. "You the great Ho-E, are you all dead?" The devil laughed ghastly as he tossed Zhang Daoling's dried corpse to the side with a wave of his hand, and then his figure flashed and left directly. The 9 paragons had been suppressed for so many years and their injuries had yet to recover. They didn't dare to attack the Jade Court's sacred realm, so they all fled to the secondary universe. On Taoist Mountain, Zhang Daoling's eyes were lifeless. He smiled wryly before his death. He wasn't a paragon and could only wait for death when facing a heavily wounded one. The 9 paragons disappeared quickly. They didn't attack the Jade Court's sacred realm right away, but instead disappeared from the secondary universe without a trace. They all had their own forces, but they were all in hiding. Even when Kuang Manor appeared out of nowhere and suppressed the other paragons, they didn't show themselves and only waited for their paragons to recover. The news of their escape quickly alerted the Jade Court's sacred realm and Kuang Manor. The few paragons in their twilight years didn't move because they couldn't find the 9 paragons unless the secondary universe was destroyed. As for Kuang Manor, they immediately sent a message to the 3 great secondary realms after knowing that the 9 paragons had recovered. Each of them sent a messenger arrow to the sky. Gu Qingyu, Mu Zhuang, Heaven's Equal Monkey King, and the others all moved out to welcome the return of Kuang Manor's army. At this time, more than a dozen terrifying forces suddenly occupied a large area and began to hunt down the people of Kuang Manor. The people of Kuang Manor had won the hearts of the people. Under the protection of the common people, they escaped from the other secondary realms and forces and returned to the heaven-seeking domain. Yan Emperor and Jian Bugui led a large group of experts to rescue the army. After spending several months, they finally managed to gather the entire army back to the Kuang Manor Immortal Kingdom. In the heaven-suppressing prefecture, the older generation of Kuang Manor gathered. They all felt a strong murderous intent. Who are these people? Gu Qingyu frowned. The sudden appearance of so many forces that were not any weaker than Kuang Manor was a little strange. Many people still did not know about the 9 sages. The Flame Emperor sat on the main seat. He had triggered the Yellow Emperor's great merit, so he knew about the War of Desolation. Those people are the descendants or forces of the 9 virtuous paragons of the secondary universe. However, they have been hidden for so long that the world has forgotten about them. Now that the 9 virtuous paragons have revived, they have also revived. Yan Emperor said in a serious tone, "The 9 Supremes paragons?" Everyone from the Crazy Manor looked at the Flame Emperor in shock. After the Yen Emperor told them about the War of the Ancients, they finally understood what had happened. Everyone, there is no need to panic. Palace Lord Yi went to find the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao in order to find a way to kill the 9 paragons. Now that they have been suppressed for so many years, they won't be able to recover to their peak state in a short period of time. The Flame Emperor said in a serious tone. After so many years, 2 people from the secondary Saint realm had arrived. They were Yi Qinghan and Situ Shuadong. Yi Qinghan carried Ho Yi's corpse and flashed into the Jadeite sacred realm. The aura of a virtuous paragon immediately alarmed the elderly lord. When the elderly lord saw Yi Qinghan, he couldn't help but let out a breath of turbid air and said with a sad expression, "Dao Ling has fallen and the 9 paragons of the secondary universe have escaped." Yi Qinghan's pupils shrunk. He didn't expect another venerable old man to leave. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said with a hoarse voice, "I know. Also, I found Ho Yi's corpse. You can bury him. Leave the 9 paragons of the secondary universe to me." The elderly lord looked at Yi Qinghan and found that his cultivation was fluctuating. It seemed to be at the limit of the progenitor realm, but upon closer inspection, there were also fluctuations of virtuous paragon power. "You've become a virtuous paragon?" the elderly lord doubtfully asked. Yi Qinghan wryly smiled and whispered, "I obtained the last strand of Ho Yi's soul and comprehended the 10-arrow art. I also obtained his boundless merit and have the power of a virtuous paragon, but I haven't stabilized my cultivation yet. It's only a matter of time. I'll go back and consolidate for a few years." The elderly lord couldn't help but sigh. The insane mansion now had 3 paragons, especially Yi Qinghan. He had comprehended the 10-arrow art and obtained the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao. It was not impossible for him to suppress the 9 paragons again. "Did you get the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao?" the elderly lord asked with anticipation. Yi Qinghan shook his head and helplessly said, "I haven't found it yet." The elderly lord sighed again. In the end, a replica was not the real thing. The difference in lethality was too great. Even if it could kill one paragon, the insane mansion had no chance of victory against 9 paragons working together. Yi Qinghan didn't say anything else. He handed Hou Yi's corpse over to the elderly lord and calmly said, "Senior elderly lord, this junior will take a trip to the 9-star realm." The elderly lord didn't try to stop him. It was a race against time. The first to leave would tilt the scales of victory. Yi Qinghan looked at Sidu Xuetong and grabbed her hand. He insipidly said, "Come with me." Yi Qinghan brought Sidu Xuetong out of the Jade Star's sacred realm and entered the 9-star realm. The 9 cauldrons grand formation had lost its effect, but the 9 divine cauldrons were still there. Thus, the laws of order were recovering very slowly. Yi Qinghan's first step was to Taoist Mountain. The peak was broken but the cauldrons were still there. However, Zhang Daoling's corpse had been taken away. Yi Qinghan reached out and grabbed the cauldron. It was as heavy as a star and filled with divine patterns, laws, and the order of virtuous paragons. It was difficult to understand. Yi Qinghan placed the cauldron in Hou Yi's yin and yang ring and soared into the sky like a meteor. Flames filled the air. The cauldrons of the other 8 planets were not damaged. The 9 paragons had left in a hurry and only half of the sovereign's origin energy in the cauldrons had been lost. Yi Qinghan kept moving. The 9 planets took away all the cauldrons. Virtuous paragon Yuzun's bone of virtue was not taken away. It wasn't that the paragons of the secondary universe didn't want to take it, but that they couldn't. Yi Qinghan held the bone of virtue and took a deep breath. He whispered, "Forefather Yuzun, the rest is up to us. You should rest." Whoosh! Yi Qinghan put the bone of virtue away and took the last cauldron with him. He rushed into the sky-seeking domain with Situ Xuetong, crossing several secondary universes in one step. In the heaven-suppressing palace, all the experts had gathered together. Even extreme saint-thieving heaven did not dare to run around. This was because the 9 paragons had ordered their descendants to capture experts for them to refine and heal their injuries. In an instant, everyone was in danger and anyone could be taken away. Qian Yixue gave up her territory and moved most of her people into the Saint World. She then moved to Kuang Manor and officially joined it. Purple Thorn Sage and Xiaoyu Sage were left with no other choice. They could either submit to Kuang Manor or be taken away. There was no third option for them. Thus, they were forced to join Kuang Manor. Chapter 3092. After the bloody storm, the 3 subworlds settled down once more. Not a single expert remained, including the Ancestor Realm experts. They were all captured alive. Outside of Kuang Fu, the progenitors and paragons were all gone. Even the Taigu Emperor didn't dare to show himself. Outside of the ancient immortal subworld, the other 2 were occupied by ancient powers. Only the resilient turtle ancestor was still guarding his territory. Without a virtuous paragon, no one could break through his defense. This turtle shell carried the scars of countless years. In the primal universe, 2 figures were moving quickly. One of them had a bow and a spear on his back. There was also a quiver with 9 arrows. Yi Qinghan brought back the 9 cauldrons from the virtuous paragon's storage ring. These cauldrons had powerful defenses that even virtuous paragons would have a hard time breaking through. They could be used for both defense and offense as long as they were refined. The 2 walked through the Qiu Heaven realm at lightning speed and finally arrived at Kuang Fu Immortal Kingdom several days later. The Crazy Manor Immortal Kingdom was still flourishing as ever. The North Xiong Immortal Kingdom, the South Immortal Kingdom, and the West Immortal Kingdom were all vassals of the Crazy Manor. Yi Qinghan looked at the kingdom and felt an inexplicable sense of pride. This is Kuang Fu Immortal Kingdom. Yi Qinghan pointed at the flourishing kingdom and proudly said, Kuang Fu Immortal Kingdom was far smaller than the Divine World, but the concentration here was much more terrifying. There would never be a situation where everyone had to fight for themselves. Sidu Xuetang looked at the Crazy Manor Immortal Kingdom that she had been looking forward to for a long time. She really wanted to see Yi Qinghan's group of brothers. Those dozen or so people had fought alongside Yi Qinghan since they were young. They were all part of the younger generation, but they were unparalleled. Each of them was equivalent to an elder of the divine realm. Hiss! Situ Shuetong sped through the kingdom and saw the flourishing cities and peaceful atmosphere. She couldn't help but marvel. Yi Qinghan smiled, and in a flash, he appeared in the heaven-suppressing palace with Situ Shuetong. At this time, Yen's sovereign and Jian Bugui were still waiting for Yi Qinghan in the heaven-suppressing palace. After all, the 9 paragons had awakened and could attack at any moment. They dared not let their guard down. Embark. A deep voice echoed in the heaven-suppressing palace. Whoosh! In an instant, dozens of silhouettes rushed out from the heaven-suppressing palace. Each of them looked like war gods with divine weapons in their hands. The men were handsome and the women were beautiful. Especially the Green Lotus Sword God, Boss, Jian Chenxue, Emperor Yi, and the others. Their auras were so strong that Situ Shuetang was no match for them. Every beauty in the crazed manor had risked their lives to get to where they were, and they were fundamentally different from Situ Shuetang. When the crazy manor's members saw that Yi Qinghan had brought another beauty with him, they couldn't help but laugh. Yi Qinghan smiled, pointed at Situ Shuetang and said calmly, "Everyone, please don't misunderstand. This person is the descendant of the 3rd planet's Ho-E virtuous sage. She and I share the same roots. Let me introduce her. She is Situ Shuetong." When Situ Shuetong heard Yi Qinghan's words, her face blushed and her heart felt sour. But when she saw Jian Chenxue and the others, she knew that Yi Qinghan wouldn't want her anymore. He didn't need another woman to squeeze into his heart. Soon, Situ Shuetong felt relieved and bowed. "Greetings, fellow Taoists. I've heard a lot about you, but seeing is better than hearing 100 times. Now that I've met you today, I'm truly in awe of what you have done." After the crowd laughed, they stopped teasing Yi Qinghan and Situ Shuetong. The flaming emperor was very calm. He didn't like to joke. At this moment, he looked at Yi Qinghan and asked, "Did you find the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao?" Yi Qinghan shook his head, but then he said, "However, there is no need to worry. Although I didn't find the Bao, I did find Ho-E virtuous sage. He gave me a great merit and a strand of his soul, allowing me to reach the virtuous sage realm." Everyone was ecstatic. They didn't expect Yi Qinghan to also reach the virtuous sage realm. Jian Bugui smiled and didn't say anything. He held his sword with both hands and stroked the scabbard with his fingertips. He hadn't used it for many years, but no one dared to blaspheme his temperament. Yi Qinghan looked at Jian Bugui and gently nodded. They didn't need to talk too much. Jian Chenxue looked at Situ Shuetong and nodded with a smile. "Let's go in and talk, there are still guests." Yi Qinghan immediately led Situ Shuetong into the main hall. This time, he didn't take the main seat. Yi Qinghan and the Flaming Emperor sat across each other while the others lined up below. The Flaming Emperor went straight to the point and said, "The 9 paragons have recovered and escaped from the 9-star realm. The paragons of the 3rd planet are old and no longer have the power to fight. Right now, only the 3 of us can fight. Qinghan, what do you think?" Yi Qinghan frowned with a cold glint in his eyes. The 9 paragons must be killed. Otherwise, the reincarnation path wouldn't be opened, let alone allowing the dead to reincarnate or even revive them. Instead of waiting, it is better to take the initiative. After 3 years, I have decided to take the initiative. The 3 of us will end this quickly and deal with the 3 of them first. They are gravely wounded and won't be able to recover in just a few years. With our strength, killing them shouldn't be a problem, right? Yi Qinghan replied with a serious tone. If the opponents were undamaged paragons at their peak, the 3 of them wouldn't be able to kill any of them. Even if they worked together, they still wouldn't be able to kill one. However, the situation was different now. Yi Qinghan, the Flaming Emperor, and Jian Bugui were the newest paragons of the younger generation. Whether it was their vitality or age, they were at the peak of their power. 3 years? What do you want to do? Jian Bugui asked with a crisp voice. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out the 9 cauldrons. He replied with a serious tone, "Refine the 9 cauldrons for my use. I will also consolidate my cultivation and familiarize myself with the 10-arrow art. Very well, we will each do our job. After 3 years, we will fight them to the death." The Flaming Emperor clenched his fists. No one was more eager than him to kill the 9 paragons, unify the 3 subworlds, open the path of reincarnation, and revive everyone in the cycle of reincarnation. Yi Qinghan nodded. His eyes swept over the carefree thieving heaven saint and the silent Yen Yunbei. He whispered, "Senior thieving heaven, old smoke, don't cultivate for the next 3 years. Apart from virtuous paragons, no one can do anything to you. Go to the 9 paragons' forces and take all their resources and equipment. Even if you can't take them away, you can't let them use them. Also, don't let the 9 paragons cultivate in peace for the next 3 years." Yen Yunbei nodded. Although the dagger in his hand couldn't keep up with his cultivation, it was still very sharp and could kill with one strike. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out a tooth. This was the tooth of a primordial monster. It took him hundreds of strikes to knock it down. As long as it was polished for a few days, it would be Yen Yunbei's best weapon. Killing a paragon would not be impossible. "Old smoke, wait for me for a month. I will prepare a new weapon for you," Yi Qinghan said with a smile. Yen Yunbei's eyes brightened. He fell in love with the tooth as soon as he saw it. "Forget it. Qinghan, give me the tooth. I will make it into a weapon for Yunbei. You can focus on refining the 9 cauldrons and try to reach the strongest battle strength as soon as possible. I can't wait any longer." The flaming emperor shook his head and took the tooth. Chapter 3093. Insane Prefecture returned to its peaceful state. The 9 paragons seemed to know that Insane Prefecture was not to be trifled with, so their descendants never crossed into the ancient immortal subworld. Even Xingxian was much safer now. Heaven Suppression Prefecture, Sky Gazing Peak. The 9 cauldrons were arranged in a circle with Yi Qinghan sitting in the center. Reverend Yu's bones of virtue were hidden in his chest as he formed a mudra with his fingers. He relied on the bones to communicate with the 9 cauldrons. The sky was blue with white clouds covering the sky. Boom! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan controlled the cauldrons to soar into the sky. The cauldrons continuously sent back information from Reverend Yu's insights. These 9 cauldrons represented Reverend Yu's limit. All of his power was displayed here. The vast and majestic laws of virtuous paragons rushed towards Yi Qinghan from the cauldron. The meritorious bone emitted a divine light that enveloped every inch of Yi Qinghan's skin. These laws seemed to have been comprehended a long time ago, so he didn't need to spend any effort to comprehend them. Wisdom imbuement. Yi Qinghan's state of mind was rapidly changing. The bones of virtue contained the last essence of Reverend Yu, including his state of mind. As long as he refined the bones of virtue, the 9 cauldrons would automatically be refined and Yi Qinghan's state of mind would completely stabilize in the virtuous paragon realm. This was especially true in terms of power. He had the power and techniques of both Ho-I and Reverend Yu on top of his own secret laws. With the accumulation of merits in the world, Insane Prefecture was extremely devout. They could have their own merits, but so could Yi Qinghan. How many merits were there for an army of tens of millions? How much faith did Insane Prefecture have? Especially now when everyone was in danger. They were all praying for Insane Prefecture to come out and suppress the current situation so that peace could return. 3 portions of merits and 3 paragons gathered into one. The small white clouds coiled around Yi Qinghan's limbs and bones to aid his cultivation. The sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow replica emitted a blinding light as it automatically opened its bowstring. In an instant, the entire subworld could feel Yi Qinghan's aura growing stronger. In the distant mysterious star Dao field, the mysterious star sage looked in the direction of Kuang Manor. Over there, heaven and earth phenomena appeared. Dragons roared, tigers roared, and divine phoenixes danced, causing one's mind to ripple. The star-profound sage took a deep breath and said to himself hoarsely, "Who would have thought? His strength has actually become so exaggerated. Just what kind of opportunity did he obtain?" Starherder stood respectfully at the side and said in a low voice, "What should we do next?" The sage frowned. On one side was the newly risen Might Kuang Prefecture, while on the other were the 9 paragons from the primordial era. It wasn't a good choice since they only trusted their own people. Others would only be refined. As for Yi Qinghan, their chances of winning were too slim. Moreover, even if they joined Quang Prefecture now, they would gain too little. This Yi Qinghan has dealings with the sage of the third planet. In addition, their chances of winning are too low, so we should stay where we are and wait for an opportunity, the Star Profound Sage said in a serious voice. Starherder was silent for a while before he bowed slightly and asked again, "The person lying in the forbidden area of the back mountain, do your best to wake him up. He has been asleep for so many years, and his identity hasn't been found out yet. However, looking at his strength, he is definitely very powerful, far surpassing me. If we can wake him up, he will have to thank me. When the time comes, we can join forces and take a share of the benefits from Quang Prefecture and the 9 Paragons," the Star Profound Sage said in a deep voice. The Star Profound Sage and Starherder came to the forbidden area of the back mountain one after the other. There was a different world here, and the scenery was picturesque. A waterfall fell from the sky, and the immortal Qi was oppressive. This person's clothing was different from that of the secondary universe, but it was also different from the original universe. He didn't have anything special on him, only a waist token and a jade pendant. Therefore, it was difficult to find out who he was. The word, sage, was engraved on the waist token. There was only one word, but the law of patterns was clear and powerful. There was nothing special about the jade pendant. Although it was rare, it wasn't expensive. His soul and body have suffered a great impact. Half of it came from the law of divine force, and the other half from the primordial black hole. Even if he can be saved, there might be problems with his soul. The Star Profound Sage sighed softly. Starherder's eyes flashed. In his opinion, although the Star Profound Sage was a sage, he couldn't be on the same level as Quang Prefecture or the 9 Paragons. It would be the same even if this person was revived. The Star Profound Sage wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. There were only 2 paths in front of Starherder. He could either side with Quang Prefecture or one of the 9 Paragons. From today onwards, you will be in charge of everything in the training ground. I will save this Taoist friend. I hope he can be saved before the war begins." The Star Profound Sage said seriously. Starherder immediately bowed. Yes. After leaving the back mountain, Starherder clenched his fists and murmured to himself, "A great man is ruthless. I also want to become a sage and not be someone's subordinate for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I don't know that person's identity, or I could have asked Quang Prefecture or the 9 Paragons for some sovereign origin energy. Although I don't know his identity, there aren't many people stronger than him. Just because I don't know doesn't mean others don't know." Starherder's eyes wandered. He didn't know whether to choose Quang Prefecture or the 9 Paragons. In the end, he looked towards the direction of Quang Prefecture. The pressure there was too strong, indicating that Yi Qinghan was rapidly advancing. "I might not be able to survive if I go to the 9 Paragons' territory, but Quang Prefecture is different. Although I betrayed the Star Profound Sacred Ground, I still brought them information. It shouldn't be hard to ask for a sovereign origin energy." Starherder decisively rushed towards Quang Prefecture. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was breaking through to the virtuous Paragon realm. His power was majestic and he could mobilize the power of the secondary worlds at any time. He could even sense the power of the original universe and the heaven domain. His power had surpassed the limit, more than twice that of an ordinary virtuous paragon. He could destroy a secondary universe with a wave of his hand. This was a power second only to the rulers. He could forcefully mobilize the power of the original universe. The 9 divine cauldrons hovered in the air and filled his psyche ocean with Yuzun's full cultivation. His power was still rising and he was about to step into the virtuous paragon realm. Time flew by and a year passed in the blink of an eye. Refining the 9 cauldrons was easier than he thought because Yuzun's bones of virtue had turned into one of his bones that protected his heart. Half a month later, Starherder appeared in Quang Prefecture's Heaven Suppressing Palace. The Flame Emperor had just sharpened the Fong into a dagger. It was half a meter long and could be used as a sword or a dagger. It contained poisonous bugs and corpse bugs. Now that the poisonous bugs and corpse bugs had evolved, they could devour the power and blood essence of sages and evolve continuously. Yen Sovereign and Jian Bugui had fed them with their own blood for a period of time. Once they went out of control, it would cause an unimaginable disaster. But they had no other choice. Yen Yunbei left Kuang Prefecture with the dagger and Great Saint Thieving Heaven, heading straight for the Purple Sun Secondary World and Heaven Surveyor Secondary World. Their destination was where the 9 sages were hiding. Starherder walked past them and entered the Heaven's Suppressing Palace. Chapter 3094. Xing Mu entered the Heaven Suppressing Palace's main Emperor Palace, but Yen Sovereign and Jian Bugui did not receive him. Instead, it was Emperor Yi and Jian Chenxue who received him. Jian Chenxue looked at Xing Mu, who hadn't been here for a long time, and asked curiously, "What orders does the Star Profound Saint have for sending you here?" Xing Mu smiled and said calmly, "This time, I'm here privately to make a deal with Manor Lord Yi. But I'm not sure if the information I have is useful." "What is it?" asked Emperor Yi. "It's about a person's whereabouts. I don't know who he is, and neither does our Saint Lord. But his cultivation level is higher than our Saint Lord's. More importantly, this person's attire is different from the secondary universe and the original universe," said Xing Mu calmly. Emperor Yi and Jian Chenxue did not know what this person could do or what he could do to the Kuang Manor. The two exchanged glances and did not know what to do. At the same time, Sidu Shui Tang returned to the main Emperor Palace after taking a stroll around the Heaven's Suppressing Palace. "What does he look like?" asked Sidu Shui Tang quickly. "What?" Xing Mu waved his hand and projected the person's face. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s, but because of his long slumber, time did not leave any traces on his face. But this face looked familiar, or rather, similar to someone. Sidu Shui Tang frowned as she felt this person was familiar, but she did not know who he was. Wait. Just as Xing Mu was about to remove the projection, Sidu Shui Tang noticed the token and the word Saint on it caught her attention. Is he the first Saint Lord? Sidu Shui Tang had never seen the first Saint Lord before. After all, the age gap between them was too big. When the first Saint Lord left, her father was not even born yet, let alone her. "Where is he?" asked Sidu Shui Tang nervously. Xing Mu smiled, rubbed his fingertips together and said calmly, "This is why I came to the Heaven Suppressing Palace. This person's whereabouts, I want to trade for something." Jian Chenxue and Emperor Yi looked at each other, then looked at Sidu Shui Tang and asked via voice transmission, "Miss Shui Tang, who is this person?" Sidu Shui Tang wasn't sure, so she shook her head. "I don't know either, but I suspect it's the first sacred master of Yi Shenshan. He has the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. There's been no news of him since he left Yi Shenshan." Jian Chenxue and Emperor Yi did not know who this person was, but it could be a very important person. Neither Jian Chenxue nor Emperor Yi dared to be careless. "I wonder what Taoist Xing Mu wants to exchange for?" Jian Chenxue asked directly. The Star Herder replied firmly, "A lump of Sovereign's origin energy and the protection of the insane manor for 3,000 years. Hiss hiss hiss, Jian Chenxue and Emperor Yi gasped. This Star Herder's taste was really not small. "It's just a person's whereabouts. Why do you want a lump of Sovereign's origin energy?" Jian Chenxue looked at Xing Mu in shock and asked suspiciously. Xing Mu shook his head and said softly, "I don't know, but my intuition tells me that my sacred master values this person very much. Now that the insane manor is about to fight against the 9 Supreme's virtuous paragons, I believe this person is worth recruiting." Huff! Emperor Yi and Jian Chenxue both sighed softly and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, they did not dare to express their opinions carelessly. After all, this involved the sovereign source energy and the whereabouts of the sun-shooting celestial destroying bow, even though the chances were slim. If that person wasn't the first sacred master and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow wasn't in his hands, then the sovereign's origin energy would be wasted. But if that person was really the first sacred master of Yi Shenshan and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow was really in his hands, then the sovereign's origin energy would be worth it. Purely gambling? Wait a moment, my husband is in seclusion. Wait for him to come out before making a decision. Emperor Yi said in a serious tone. Xing Mu shook his head and said indifferently, If your manor doesn't want to trade, then I'll have to find someone else. I'm afraid Insane Manor isn't the only one interested in this person. Aren't you afraid that I'll take you down and hand you over to the Star Profound Sage? Jian Chenxue asked coldly. Xing Mu smiled evilly and replied confidently, if I wasn't prepared, how would I dare to take the risk alone? I can't leave Insane Manor today. This news will be delivered to the 9 Supreme's virtuous paragons within 3 days. However, I also believe in Insane Manor's character. Even if they don't trade, they will let me go and keep this secret. Xing Mu said indifferently. Sidu Xuetang really wanted to trade, but she didn't have the sovereign's origin energy, so she could only look at Emperor Yi and Jian Chenxue. Inform everyone in Insane Manor to come to the main Imperial Hall to discuss this matter. Jian Chenxue said to the guards outside the hall. One of the guards immediately retreated. A moment later, all the experts guarding the main Imperial Hall moved out and entered the hall. Even Lu Feng and Chu Shijunxian came. When Yan Emperor found out that Xing Mu wanted to trade a piece of information for the sovereign's origin energy, his eyes flashed fiercely, and he almost killed Xing Mu on the spot. Lu Feng's cold eyes stared at Xing Mu. His murderous aura filled the air, making people shudder. You're the only person who has dared to threaten Insane Manor in recent years, Lu Feng said coldly. Xing Mu smiled and replied, how can this be a threat? I'm here to trade. I'm not planning to force a trade, am I? Xing Mu was almost certain that Insane Manor cared about this person. Otherwise, they would have asked him to leave long ago. This test gave him more than a 50% chance of obtaining the sovereign's origin energy. At this moment, a person appeared in the main Imperial Hall. It was Yi Qinghan, who had been in seclusion for more than a year. Then I'll trade with you, Yi Qinghan said without even asking. Everyone was shocked. Yi Qinghan agreed without even knowing the information. He didn't put the sovereign's origin energy in his eyes at all. Speak. Give me your information and I'll give you the sovereign's origin energy. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out a ball of sovereign's origin energy. He casually threw it to Xing Mu. The light in his eyes made Xing Mu not dare to look directly at it. Xing Mu was also shocked by Yi Qinghan's straightforwardness. At this moment, he even suspected that Yi Qinghan was trying to trick him. That person is in the forbidden area behind the Star Mystic Holy Land. He has been sleeping there for countless years and has shown no signs of waking up. The Star Mystic Sage said that he is very powerful and has almost reached the virtuous Paragon realm, Xing Mu said with a trembling voice. Yi Qinghan rubbed his chin and said calmly, Xing Mu, I hope you're telling the truth. Come with me to the Star Mystic Holy Land to verify it. Asterisk plop. Asterisk Xing Mu was so scared that he knelt on the ground and said in fear, Mansion Lord, I can't go to the Holy Land. He will kill me. It's not up to you. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. He directly grabbed Xing Mu and teleported to the Star Mystic Holy Land. The Saint Mountain was peaceful. However, it didn't rely on the power of the Saint Mountain. It relied on the Crazy Mansion to guard the ancient immortal subrealm. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk Yi Qinghan brought Xing Mu to the Saint Mountain. His divine sense flashed and he couldn't find the Star Mystic Sage's location. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk Yi Qinghan brought Xing Mu to the forbidden area behind the mountain without alerting anyone. Even the Star Mystic Sage didn't sense that Yi Qinghan had arrived. Senior Star Mystic, long time no see, Yi Qinghan said faintly. The Star Mystic Sage was startled and quickly turned around. When he saw Yi Qinghan appear behind him, he couldn't help but have goosebumps. Yi Qinghan glanced at the 50 to 60-year-old man lying on the stone slab. Although he couldn't be sure of this person's identity, he was certain that this person's cultivation was very powerful. Chapter 3095. In the forbidden area of the Star Profound Holy Land, Xing Xian looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. He had never expected him to appear here. Xing Mu was terrified. He knelt on the ground, not daring to say a word. Manor Lord Yi, what are you doing? The Star Profound Sage looked at Xing Mu and asked in confusion. Yi Qinghan said bluntly, Who is this person lying on the ground? Where did you bring him? Xing Xian frowned at Yi Qinghan and said in a deep voice, "Manor Lord Yi, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. This is my forbidden area. You broke in without my permission. Isn't that against the rules?" "Phew," Yi Qinghan gently exhaled and said indifferently, "Let's put it this way. This person might be related to the life and death of the entire universe. If Senior wants to continue enjoying peace, you might as well tell me about his origin." "No way. He's just a sage who has been in a coma for countless years. You don't even know who he is, yet you say that he's related to the life and death of the universe. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child?" Xing Xian asked with some dissatisfaction. Yi Qinghan glanced at Xing Mu. He looked down on this kind of person, so he didn't plan on letting him live. "He asked me to use a portion of the sovereign's origin energy to buy the location of this unconscious person, so I'm sure you don't know him. The number of sages in the entire universe is fixed. Even if there are 1 or 2 who hide their identity, it doesn't mean they don't have a name. We don't know this person, so it means that he came from another place, a place that rarely appears in the world. As far as I know, only the world of virtuous sages can give birth to such a sage, so I suspect he's the son of virtuous sage Ho-I." Yi Qinghan calmly explained. "Hiss." Xing Mu sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to sell him out. The star-profound sage was furious. He didn't expect his descendant to sell him out for a lump of sovereign's origin energy. He even threatened that if I didn't take him in, he would sell this information to the 9 paragons. He didn't even think about how your Sage Mountain would survive if my insane faction were to be defeated. Yi Qinghan gloomily said, "Don't you know why only the ancient immortal subworld is peaceful after the 9 paragons' revival while the other subworlds are in danger? It's my crazy manor that's overseeing this place. Unfortunately, you've all forgotten about it." Yi Qinghan glanced at Xing Mu and calmly reminded him, "Also, I owe you a favor. I'm giving him to you to repay the favor." Boom! The star-profound sage pressed down with his palm, which contained endless power of the sage and directly shattered the soul of the star herder, killing him. Phew! The star-profound sage exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and instantly aged a lot. He never thought that he would be betrayed by the person closest to him. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out the sovereign's origin energy. He handed it to the star-profound sage and said indifferently, "I'm taking this person with me. Also, if Senior can tell me where you brought him from, this faction will be very grateful." The star-profound sage was unwilling. He looked at the sovereign's origin energy in Yi Qinghan's hand. If he took it, he would have to give up on this person. If he didn't take it, Yi Qinghan was no longer the same as before. No one could refuse him what he wanted. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice, "Senior, in the Battle of the Paragons, no one will take the lead. Everyone will die. I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy more than a few days of peace. Don't be short-sighted." The star-profound sage bitterly smiled and sighed. "Back then, it was an unintentional act. You and I can be considered to have had some opportunities. Since you said so, I also don't want to destroy our friendship. You can take this person with you. I found him when I was traveling through the Chio Heaven domain. I found him in the west of the 9-star domain. There is a pattern on his back. It's a bow. It's the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow." Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed and he immediately became excited. This sentence basically confirmed the identity of this person. He was definitely the first-generation sacred master of Yi Shenshan, the son of Ho-I virtuous sage. Yi Qinghan bowed and cupped his fists. "Thank you, Senior." The star-profound sage took the sovereign's origin energy and looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly. He whispered, "Faction Lord Yi, tell me the truth. How confident are you in winning against those 9 paragons? Even if it's a draw, at least you can protect the ancient immortal subworld and turn it into a clean land." Yi Qinghan pondered for a while and replied in a serious voice, "I don't dare to say how confident I am in winning, but I am 70 to 80% confident in protecting the ancient immortal subworld. Senior, I don't want you to pick the wrong side at the last moment. As long as we eliminate those 9 paragons, I can join hands with Senior Yen Emperor to clear the reincarnation cycle and even revive some people." The The star-profound sage's eyes flashed as he sighed and said, "Since it's a critical moment, take back this sovereign's origin energy and give it to someone who can use it. I hope you can win. I'm willing to contribute to the final battle." Yi Qinghan smiled and didn't refuse. He took the sovereign's origin energy and whispered, "Thank you, senior. Take him away." The star-profound sage waved his hand. Yi Qinghan carried the sleeping old man on his back and brought him out of the Saint Mountain. With Yi Qinghan's current speed, crossing the subworld was just a matter of moments. Half an hour later, Yi Qinghan appeared in the heaven-suppressing palace with the sleeping old man. He used the virtuous paragons Yin and Yang ring to enter the Yishan realm and brought out the medicine god and Saint Master. Saint Master and Medicine God immediately recognized that the sleeping old man was the first Saint Master. "Why is he in a deep sleep?" Saint Master asked in shock. Medicine God quickly squatted down and his soul entered the old man's psyche ocean. He found out that the old man's soul was damaged twice. The first was caused by someone. It was left behind from the first war of destruction in the Yishan realm. Before he could recover, he left the Yishan realm. But just as he left the Yishan realm and entered the original universe, he was attacked by the primordial black hole and was heavily injured again. Medicine God quickly took out 2 golden divine pellets and placed the first one into the old man's mouth. "Master, please help him refine the divine pellet. It's easy to wake him up, but I'm afraid he won't be able to fight even if he wakes up," Medicine God said solemnly. Yi Qinghan nodded silently. He didn't need Ho Yi's son to fight, but the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao must be found. Saint Light shrouded Yi Qinghan and the sleeping old man. Billowing virtuous paragon power surged into the old man's psyche ocean and healed him bit by bit. Under the soul divine pellet's comfort, his damaged soul was slowly recovering. Time passed and the tension was suffocating. Only this old man knew where the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao was. Even if the Bao was fused with him, he must be awakened before he could be retrieved. Otherwise, the only way was to refine his body. 3 months later, the sleeping old man finally showed some reaction. His brows twitched and his fingertips trembled slightly. He was about to wake up. Everyone in the Kuang Manor looked at the old man with anticipation. Yen's sovereign was unprecedentedly nervous. Obtaining the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao meant that the 9-colored Brahma heart was about to be revived. Chapter 3096. The righteous royal hall was filled with experts. 90% of the experts outside of the 9 paragons and the world of paragons were present. Even 3 paragons working together couldn't deal with Kuang Manor. At this moment, everyone was staring at the old man. The old man had a splitting headache. He couldn't endure this pain even in his sleep. His soul had been tormenting him for so many years. Out of self-preservation, he slept for so many years. Now, he was forcefully awakened. Luckily, Yi Qinghan had healed half of his injuries. Yi Qinghan didn't stop healing him and continued channeling his paragon power. The alchemy god elder placed a second divine pill into the old man's mouth. It also melted in his mouth. Soul-type divine pills were all of the best quality. They were made specifically for soul injuries and were priceless. As long as one's soul wasn't destroyed, they could be saved. When the second pill entered the old man's body, his soul felt as if it was being bathed in warm water. It was exceptionally comfortable. Under the protection of the divine pill and Yi Qinghan's paragon power, the old man finally woke up. His eyes were cloudy and full of fatigue. His silver-white hair made him look even older. The old man had never seen Yi Qinghan before. He didn't even know the Divine Lord and Alchemy God. After all, they were only a few years old when he left. The old man felt someone protecting his soul. He narrowed his eyes at the group kneeling before him and asked with a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" The current Divine Lord kneeled before the old man and respectfully replied, "Grandfather, I am Xian Long. My father is your 6th son, Jingxian." The old man finally showed some emotion. There was no way he didn't know Jingxian. That was the second Divine Lord he personally appointed. "Where is Jingxian?" the old man softly asked. The current Sacred Lord immediately replied, "Grandpa, About 10 epochs after you left, the Ishan world once again had outsiders descend upon it. Father died in battle for the Ishan world, and now, I am the sacred lord of the Ishan world. Sigh, the old man sighed. He didn't expect his favorite son to die even earlier than him. I slept for an unknown amount of time, and when I woke up, the world had already changed. The old man sighed. He wanted to struggle to his feet, but he couldn't. Yi Qinghan got up and helped him up. He bowed slightly and said, "Greetings, senior brother, Ho Yi's personal disciple, Yi Qinghan." The old man was stunned. His father's direct disciples had all died in battle, and there was not a single one left. Why had another one suddenly appeared? "Grandpa, Lord Yi entered God Yi's world recently and awakened Father God. Father God turned the last wisp of his soul into essence and gave it to Lord Yi." Sacred leader Xianlong hurriedly explained. Only then did the old man understand what was going on. He immediately smiled and said, "So it's junior apprentice brother. It seems that you've saved this old man." Yi Qinghan immediately bowed and replied, "This is also a coincidence. What's the situation now?" Although the old man was past his prime, he still cared about the big picture. Yi Qinghan immediately explained, "Back then, virtuous paragons were suppressed by virtuous paragon Yuzun and virtuous paragon Ho Yi. Now that they have awakened, junior apprentice brother urgently needs the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow to suppress these people again. I hope that senior apprentice brother can bestow the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow to junior apprentice brother." The old man frowned. He didn't expect the situation to be this bad. He wanted to summon the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow, but he didn't have the ability to do so. "Cooperate with this old man and take out the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. I don't need it anymore, so I'll leave it to you," the old man said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan held the old man's hand. His soul entered the old man's sea of consciousness and cooperated with the old man's soul to forcefully mobilize the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. Whoosh! The real sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow appeared. In an instant, the world changed. Dark clouds covered the sky, but they couldn't cover the light of the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. The quiver also appeared. There were only 7 arrows left inside since 2 of them were missing. Yi Qinghan took the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow and forcefully severed the connection between the old man and the bow. This was because the old man couldn't break the contract between him and the bow. With the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow in hand, Yi Qinghan gave the replica to the current Sacred Lord Xianlong, while he refined the real sun-shooting immortal destroying bow. "Sacred Lord Xianlong, I'm afraid you'll have to participate in this battle as well," Yi Qinghan said gravely. Sacred Lord Xianlong solemnly nodded. After refining the immortal bow, Yi Qinghan glanced around and said, "Prepare for battle. For this battle, Senior Yan Emperor, Bugui, and Sacred Lord Xianlong will take the initiative to attack. All cultivators above the Ancestor Realm will gather at the Seeking Heaven Realm. We'll set the battlefield there so as to not harm the common people." Without waiting for the 9 virtuous paragons to take action, the name of battle was meaningless. Surviving was the best option. Yan Emperor took a deep breath. His battle intent looked down on all existences as the mortal Emperor's sword trembled. This was his thirst for the final battle. "There's no time to lose, I'll announce the plan. Senior Yan Emperor and I will assassinate 2 virtuous paragons on our own. We'll end the battle quickly and not give the enemy a chance to send reinforcements. Sacred Lord Xianlong and Bugui will work together to kill one, eliminating 3 out of 9. The remaining 6 won't be too difficult to deal with. At most, both sides will suffer heavy losses." Yi Qinghan looked at the solemn crowd and felt his blood boiling. He alone had the inheritances of 2 virtuous paragons. He could instantly kill a virtuous paragon and even a virtuous paragon. Yi Qinghan had the ability to kill people that the 3 kings and 5 emperors couldn't kill back then. 1 + 1 wasn't as simple as 2. He had fused with the inheritances of 2 virtuous paragons, but it definitely wasn't the power of 2 virtuous paragons. Moreover, he himself had entered the virtuous paragon realm. "Good, I've been waiting for this for a long time." Yen Emperor exhaled and raised his voice while holding his sword. Jian Bugue smiled. Her state of mind was no longer fluctuating. She had promised to help Yi Qinghan in the final battle. Now that this battle had come, it was time to end it. She hoped that after winning this battle, Zhang Fan would be able to return alive. Whether it was reincarnation or resurrection, there would be no regrets in her heart. Wu Tian, go to the third planet and inform the Elder Lord that we will fight the final battle first. If there are any ancestors from the 3 kings and 5 emperors who are willing to fight, please do your best. Yi Qinghan looked at Yi Tong and said in a serious tone. Yes, Master. Lin Wutian bowed and said, Bush. Lin Wutian didn't hesitate and directly left. Yi Qinghan looked at Yen Emperor, Jian Bugue, and Sacred Lord Xianlong. After exchanging glances, they all nodded and resolutely stepped towards the Qiutian realm. The 4 of them were the vanguard and quickly moved forward. They didn't want to give the virtuous paragons time to recover. Sacred Lord Xianlong was not a virtuous paragon, but he had a replica of the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. He could definitely buy some time for Jian Bugue. Jian Bugue, Yen Emperor, and Yi Qinghan were all young men at the peak of their power. The virtuous paragons were past their prime. Those who couldn't be killed back then could now be killed and completely destroyed, causing them to be on the verge of death. Chapter 3097. 4 experts appeared at the heaven-seeking realm. Their initial targets were the 4 virtuous paragons in the Heaven Survey subrealm. There were 5 in the Violet Sun subrealm, but they were hiding in different areas. It was very difficult to pinpoint their final location. However, there were 2 existences at the peak of the 9th level in the Crazy Mansion. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint and Yen Yunbei. The 2 of them split up to search for the 4 paragons. Their silhouettes flickered silently. Even the sages couldn't find them. The Heaven Survey subrealm was a sacred ground for sages. There were many experts here, but all of them were strangers. It was certain that there was a virtuous paragon hiding here, and these strangers must have come from the virtuous paragon world. Yen Yunbei held his dagger and quietly sneaked in. He found that there were experts guarding all 4 sides of this mountain range with numerous formations. It would be very difficult for anyone to sneak in without being noticed. This meant that there were virtuous paragons recovering from their injuries inside. Yen Yunbei didn't want to alert the enemy and quietly retreated. Many members of the Assassin Legion were disguised as ordinary people and roamed around the Heaven Survey subrealm. Moreover, they were quite popular with the people. Under the protection of the common people, they were like fish in water and weren't hunted down by the virtuous paragons. At this time, Yen Yunbei mobilized a portion of the Legion to quickly spread the news. At this moment, Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint was indeed a veteran. Not only did he find the location of a virtuous paragon, he also entered a treasury and emptied it. He also conveniently stole the supreme weapon of a virtuous paragon before escaping unscathed. Very quickly, the locations of 3 paragons were confirmed, but the last one was nowhere to be found. Yi Qinghan, Yen King, Jian Bugue, and Xianlong Sacred Lord didn't immediately take action. Without finding the 4th paragon, the other party could appear at any time and could cause the mission to fail. Yen Yunbei, Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint, and Yi Qinghan's group met up in a valley inside the Heaven Survey subrealm. Let's find the locations of all the paragons in the Heaven Survey subrealm before taking action. Yi Qinghan was very cautious. He had to win the first match without any mishaps. He could not afford to let his guard down. Yen Yunbei frowned and said in a serious tone, "The territories of Heaven Blessed Sage, Xiaoyu Sage, and Fengyue Sage all have a virtuous paragon, but outside of them, only Turtle Sage's territory hasn't been visited. However, this person has never submitted to the 9 paragons. His defense is exceptionally strong and he has even fought against the disciples of virtuous paragons several times. Both sides suffered losses, so there shouldn't be any virtuous paragons hiding in his territory, right? The most unlikely place is the most likely place. There is an 80% chance that the 4th virtuous paragon is in the turtle ancestor's territory. Moreover, it is very likely that he has reached an agreement with the turtle ancestor. It is just a cover. The Flame Emperor calmly said. Yi Qinghan nodded and said, all is fair in war. I agree with Senior Yen Emperor's speculation. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint shrugged and said faintly, I'll go take a look. If it's true, this daddy will take the turtle ancestor's turtle shell. Whoosh! Whoosh! Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's figure flickered. There wasn't even a spatial fluctuation as he directly left the place. 2 hours later, he appeared inside the turtle ancestor's sacred ground. The defense here was quite tight, but there wasn't a second unfamiliar sage. This meant that there were no descendants of virtuous paragons here. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint quietly entered the depths of the sacred ground and continued to wander around the forbidden grounds. He found many treasures and casually took them all away. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find any traces of virtuous paragons. He thought that Yi Qinghan and the Flame Emperor's speculation was wrong and was about to leave. However, when he was about to return, he found something amiss outside of a tall building. A large group of experts were hiding around the building. There were 2 sage auras that were faintly discernible. If it wasn't for Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's understanding of the ultimate profundity of space to an impeccable level, he wouldn't have been able to find out that there was something hidden here. Interesting, it really is here. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's eyes flashed as he stared at the center of the building. He was bold and daring as he took advantage of the night to sneak into the building. A skeleton-like old man emitted light as he sat on the top floor. The entire building was covered by a spirit-gathering formation with dense spirit energy. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint approached the virtuous paragon's room but didn't dare to enter. A virtuous paragon was still a virtuous paragon while a sage was only an ant before him. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smirked and used the spatial escape to leave the building. Turtle Ancestor, you are the one who provoked me. Your turtle shell is mine for sure. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint found the turtle ancestor who was in seclusion. The turtle shell was his innate divine armor that he always wore on his body. Moreover, it was connected by blood and contract. Whoosh! Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint didn't hide his identity and location and directly appeared in front of the turtle ancestor. The turtle ancestor suddenly opened his eyes. His old and ugly face resembled an incomplete turtle as he stared at Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint with his deep eyes. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint was so famous and wanted by so many sages, there was no way the turtle ancestor wouldn't recognize this old man. It's you. You are truly daring. The turtle ancestor gloomily scolded, You actually dared to come to my place of seclusion. Do you really think you are a sage? Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smirked. Turtle ancestor, you are asking a tiger for its skin. If I inform Yi Qinghan, I wonder if your turtle shell can stop the destruction of the Sunshot Immortal Vanquishing Bow? The turtle ancestor's aura paused for a moment before he replied with disdain. The Sunshot Immortal Vanquishing Bow has disappeared for countless years. Yi Qinghan doesn't have it, what can he do to me? Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint sneered, What an old fool. He doesn't have the Sunshot Immortal Vanquishing Bow, but he does have a replica. That is also a divine weapon from a virtuous paragon. It shouldn't be a problem for it to penetrate your defense. The turtle ancestor's aura froze as he nervously took a step back. He cautiously stared at Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint and asked in a muffled voice, You are also from the secondary universe. Yi Qinghan has dealings with the third planet and is opposing a virtuous paragon from the secondary universe. This is tantamount to betraying your ancestors. Do you want to work with the insane sect to deal with a virtuous paragon from my secondary universe? Hee. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint took a step forward while the turtle ancestor took a step back. However, Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint relied on his speed and space profundity, so his right hand was still on the turtle ancestor's shoulder. Don't be nervous, everything can be discussed. Lend me your turtle shell and I won't tell on you. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smirked. The turtle ancestor was furious. His turtle shell was a life-saving treasure that he had accumulated over countless years. It could even withstand a blow from a virtuous paragon. How could he lend it to someone else? Moreover, this was Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint who refused to return it. You are courting death. If you leave now, I can spare your life. Otherwise, if you disturb the awakening of a virtuous paragon, you won't survive even if you have 9 lives. The turtle ancestor threatened. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smiled with disdain and patted the turtle ancestor's shoulder before lightly saying, "We'll see who will die in 3 months." Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's figure flashed and left the turtle ancestor's place of seclusion. The turtle ancestor didn't expect Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint to leave in such a painful manner. He was still rejoicing when he suddenly remembered Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's personality and knew that he wouldn't leave empty-handed. He immediately remembered the second turtle shell in his spatial ring. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows, let alone the turtle ancestor. He had more than 1 turtle shell and another was hidden in his spatial ring. However, when he checked his spatial ring, the other turtle shell was gone. Ah! The turtle ancestor roared and angrily rushed out. However, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven had already escaped with his turtle shell. His whereabouts were unknown. Chapter 3098. In the valley between the Heaven Survey subworld and the 3 sacred grounds, an old man with a turtle shell on his back was humming and jumping into the depths with a smug expression. This was Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven. With this turtle shell, I'm confident in escaping even if it's a virtuous paragon. His mouth was about to split into a line while his eyes were filled with a challenging aura. This old geezer was old but not old at heart. A moment later, Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven appeared before Yi Qinghan's group with his turtle shell with a smug smile. I got one of the 2 shells. Also, I'll tell you some good news. That virtuous paragon is indeed hiding in the turtle ancestral sacred ground. Yi Qinghan's group heaved a sigh of relief. Today was the day of the decisive battle. Whoosh! Everyone opened the map and looked at it. There were a total of 4 sacred grounds, the territories of the 4 virtuous paragons in the past. The 9 virtuous paragons were quite bold to occupy all of the sacred grounds as their base. The Fangyue sacred ground was in the southeast, the deepest part of the Heaven Survey subworld. The Carefree sacred ground was in the southwest with the Fangyue sacred ground in the east and west, forming a triangle with the Heaven-blessed sacred ground. The Turtle ancestral sacred ground was behind the Heaven-blessed sacred ground. I'll be in charge of the Heaven-blessed sacred ground's virtuous paragon. Bugei and Xianlong sacred lord will be in charge of the one in the southwest. Senior Flame Emperor will be in charge of the one in the southeast. Old Smoke and Senior Thieving Heaven will take away a portion of the creatures around the 3 sacred grounds. Take as many as you can. We must leave the Heaven Survey subworld and enter the Heaven-seeking realm before midnight to avoid being affected by the shockwaves. As for the other creatures, we have no choice but to give up. Yi Qinghan said in a serious tone. Who knew how many creatures there were in this vast subworld? Taking away half of them would be quite good. Yi Qinghan pointed at the map and said, "Tonight, the 4 of us will attack together at the fastest speed and no matter the cost. Even if the Turtle Ancestral Sacred Ground's virtuous paragon can react, the first to face him will be me. With my strength, I can kill the Heaven-blessed paragon and stop the Turtle Ancestral Sacred Ground's virtuous paragon." Yen Yunbei and Extreme Saint Thieving didn't waste any words. They first wandered around the small regions and took away the living beings in the periphery. They were now in the Sage world and were incomparably huge. It wasn't a problem for the 2 of them to take away more than half of the living beings in the subworld. Everything happened quietly. Even the 9 Paragon spies were taken away, so there was no way for the news to reach the ears of the Paragon's descendants. Yen Emperor entered the southeast region while Jian Bugui and Sacred Lord Xianlong entered the southwest region. Their weapons had yet to awaken. Yi Qinghan was alone in the heaven-blessed sacred ground, silently waiting for Hai to arrive. The 9 divine cauldrons and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow were both in his hands. He alone inherited the cultivation of 2 virtuous paragons. Moreover, his reverse 5 elements Grand Tao had taken shape, allowing him to become a virtuous paragon. He alone had the power of 3 virtuous paragons, so under the circumstances of a sneak attack, killing a wounded virtuous paragon was still possible. The virtuous paragon inside the heaven-blessed sacred ground didn't expect for the crazy mansion to initiate an apocalyptic battle at this time. Not only was it dangerous, but it also had to bear countless curses. This virtuous paragon was as thin as a skeleton. His blood energy had only recovered by 50%. There was still a bit of saint energy flowing through his body. His chest was pierced by the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow, suppressing his peak power. Without the Lord's origin energy to heal their wounded bodies, they could only rely on time. However, they needed tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. Yi Qinghan wouldn't give them that time. Yi Qinghan stood on top of a mountain with the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow in his hand. The 9 cauldrons revolved around him as he quietly waited for time to pass. Yan Emperor was in position, so were Jian Bugui and Sacred Lord Xianlong. Hiss! In the southeast region, Crimson Flame was still in its first state. Because it shared the same realm as Yan Emperor, its power was monstrous. The two of them working together was equivalent to 2 virtuous paragons working together. Crimson Flame let out a long cry with an imposing appearance. The mortal king's sword was ready to attack. I have waited for too long. Yan Emperor took a deep breath and said with a hoarse voice, 9-colored, if I can't reincarnate or revive you, then I will accompany you. This was the final battle. Yi Qinghan had given him hope, and he was also fighting for this last hope. Yan Emperor's aura was transcendent as he caressed the scabbard of the mortal king's sword with both hands. The scabbard was filled with killing runes. Yan Emperor had evolved the sword move countless times. The first and last move was enough to destroy a sacred ground. Mortal King Heaven Sealing. The Flame Emperor closed his eyes, and the sword technique flashed in his sea of consciousness. It was enough to split the Holy Land into 2, and the aftermath could destroy a secondary universe. After tomorrow, the Fengyue Holy Land would disappear completely, leaving no trace behind. In the Xiaoyu sacred ground, Jian Bugui held the sword of no return in his hand. The aura of no return from the past had returned once more. However, her current strength was enough to cause the power of a large secondary world to move with her sword. Profound Dragon Sacred Lord, immediately draw your bow and fire all 9 arrows to force that virtuous paragon out. The moment he appears, I will erupt with all of my power. Success or failure will depend on that one sword move. If we can't kill or wound him, then there will be no more chances. Jian Bugui said in a serious tone. Once the sword was unleashed, there would be no return until death. Profound Dragon nodded solemnly. He had also cultivated the 10-arrow art to its peak, but it was only at the peak of the Sage realm, far from being a virtuous paragon. He was only responsible for forcing that virtuous paragon out. Yan Yunbei and Thieving Heaven's Sacred Lord roamed the secondary universes outside of the 3 sacred grounds. All the living beings in the nearby secondary universes were taken away by them. Time quickly passed. Dusk had passed and darkness descended. Even the moonlight was gone. A moonless and windy night for murder. A murderous aura permeated the air as if hinting at the impending massacre. Near the heaven-blessed sacred ground, Yi Qinghan stood outside with 7 sun-shooting arrows on his back and 9 cauldrons under his feet. It was as if Ho-Yi had reappeared in this world. No, it could be said that he was an existence even stronger than Ho-Yi. Su Shi was about to end, and Hai Shi was about to arrive. Yi Qinghan took out 2 sun-shooting arrows from his back. One was placed on the bow while the other was in his mouth. The first arrow was to force the virtuous paragon out while the second arrow was the real weapon to kill him. The 9 cauldrons would wait until the moment the first arrow was shot to envelop the sacred ground. At that time, no one would be able to escape. Hiss! Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. The small white cloud turned into a white cloud glove. The divine bird had already fused with Yi Qinghan and was ready for battle. Dark clouds covered the top of his head, making it impossible to see his fingers in front of him. Yi Qinghan soared into the sky and silently calculated the time. Only half an incense stick's worth of time was left until night. The 9 cauldrons could suppress at any time while the first sun-shooting arrow could also annihilate the sacred ground. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. His breathing was very rhythmic. Slowly, Yi Qinghan began to draw the bow. The power absorbed by the bow caused the nearby space to collapse, but it didn't alarm the people on the sacred mountain. 10-arrow art. 9 arrows combined into 10. This was the true arrow of destruction. It was enough to cause the collapse of the heavens. Yi Qinghan didn't have 9 arrows, only 7. However, he had 9 cauldrons protecting him. Buzz! The tip of the arrow was aimed at the sacred ground. It trembled rapidly and accurately aimed at the foot of the sacred mountain. This arrow could pierce through the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers and could also destroy a secondary universe. Night had arrived. Yi Qinghan glared. The first arrow roared out and annihilated space as it headed straight for the sacred mountain. The battle of destruction began with the first arrow. Boom! The sun-shooting arrow tore through the darkness with a monstrous flame. Chapter 3099. Boom! The first arrow had the power to destroy the world. It tore through the dark secondary universe and erupted with a power that illuminated more than half of the secondary realm. In the blink of an eye, the first sunshot arrow appeared at the foot of the sacred mountain. It flattened an area of millions of miles. The entire sacred mountain was annihilated. The flames reached the sky and evaporated the escaping paragons. Whoosh! The 9 cauldrons below Yi Qinghan's feet spun the stars and suppressed the earth. They wrapped around the sacred mountain and prevented the shockwaves from spreading outwards. They were afraid that this arrow would affect the other secondary universes and the common people outside of the sacred mountain. Yi Qinghan didn't want to destroy the world. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's blood boiled. This was his first time using the power of a virtuous paragon since he had comprehended it. Yi Qinghan stared at the sacred mountain. He took out the second sunshot arrow from his mouth and drew the bow once more. He aimed at the sacred mountain and waited for the paragons to come out. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Roar! An angry roar shattered the mountains and rivers. An old man with white hair rushed out from the flames of the sacred mountain. He was a virtuous paragon with a soul-stealing sword in his hand. The sword was already unsheathed and carried a world-destroying power. It swept through the 4 directions, but it still collided with the divine formation laid down by the cauldrons. A blinding light shone everywhere. Whoosh! The second sunshot arrow roared out the moment he appeared. It was so fast that even the paragon couldn't react in time. The moment the second sun-shooting arrow missed its target, Yi Qinghan grabbed the quiver on his back with his right hand. The remaining 5 arrows were all in his hand, and he knocked all of them onto his bow. The sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow bloomed with the most beautiful divine light, even more soul-stealing than the scorching sun. Oh, you're not dead yet? The paragon was horrified. He slashed his sword at the incoming arrow. The entire void was twisting and collapsing. The friction between the arrow tip and the distortion was particularly clear. Yi Qinghan of the Insane Mansion shall send you to the reincarnation cycle. Whoosh! The stable space was cut apart by the bowstring. The veins on Yi Qinghan's arms bulged. The small white cloud coiled around his arms and supported him by 30%. The power of the 3 paragons combined to unleash the final attack. Boom! 5 arrows shot out at the same time. The entire heaven-warping sacred ground collapsed. Even the secondary realms were pierced through. A huge abyss appeared at the center of the Heaven Sentinel secondary world. The 5 sunshot arrows drew a perfect arc and merged into one right in front of the paragon. This was the 10-arrow technique. Although it didn't combine 9 arrows into one, it possessed the peak power of the 10-arrow technique, or even stronger. Whoosh-boom! The second sun-shooting arrow clashed with the paragon's immortal sword. The 2 sides were in a stalemate, but the 5 arrows combined into one pierced through the sword and pierced through the paragon's chest. The 60% of the paragon's recovered blood energy exploded and was ignited by the blue flame demonic flame that had reached the paragon level. Ugh. Impossible! The virtuous paragon was frightened. He had an indestructible life force. Even the combined efforts of Ho-E and Yuzun couldn't kill him, but now he could clearly feel death approaching. At this moment, his face twisted in horror as he felt his body collapsing and his life force dissipating. Nothing is impossible. Yi Qinghan soared into the sky with the sun shooting immortal vanquishing bow on his back. His 10 fingers formed a mudra as he went against the grand Tao of the 5 elements to traverse the heaven and earth. His feet stomped on the earth while his hand grasped the heavens. Boom! Yi Qinghan's powerful palm utilized the power of 3 paragons. He didn't even try to defend and only wanted to kill this paragon in an instant. The paragon was in despair. He ferociously threw out the sword in his hand in order to destroy Yi Qinghan's second sun-shooting arrow. His own hands flipped the sky in order to stop Yi Qinghan's powerful attack. Boom! The universal laws of the paragons shattered the sacred ground. The divine cauldrons emitted boundless light and formed a new 9 cauldrons grand formation that blocked the shockwaves from the battle between the 2 paragons. This place became a true hell without any signs of life. Boom! Boom! Yi Qinghan's palm carried a murderous intent and mercilessly crushed the paragon's heaven-flipping power. It easily shattered the paragon's arms and slammed into his head. The paragon's body collapsed along with the 5 world-ending arrows that completely annihilated his body. An indestructible body could also die. The paragon's soul fell into a hopeless situation as everything was annihilated by absolute power. In the distant sky above the turtle ancestor sacred ground, one could clearly see that the heaven-blessed sacred ground was no more. The light in the sky tore through everything and formed a huge maelstrom. With a roar, Yi Qinghan's figure shifted and turned into several thousand figures. Each of them derived a different destructive technique while holding a peerless 7-foot berserk maniac. Even the black hole was distorted into a berserk maniac. Boom! This attack crossed through the secondary world with the power to annihilate paragons. It was accompanied by the peak power of Yuzun, Hou-Yi, and himself. In the blink of an eye, it destroyed the heaven-blessed sacred ground. The paragon was terrified. The paragon was in complete despair. This Yi Qinghan was only a junior, yet he had the merit and power of 2 paragons, Yu Sovereign and Hou-Yi. He also had the power of a paragon invincible within the same realm. This paragon was already at his limit for being able to block so many attacks with his half-crippled body. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion destroyed everything in the heaven-blessed sacred ground. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After unleashing this destructive power, Yi Qinghan instantly disappeared into thin air. He formed a mudra with both hands and the 7 sun-shooting arrows returned to the quiver. They were not lost. The heaven-blessed sacred ground fell into a dead silence. No, it was no more. It had completely disappeared from this secondary world. Whoosh! Inside the sacred ground, a paragon soared into the sky while holding the turtle ancestor sage in his hand. He wanted to use the sage's shell to stop Yi Qinghan's attack. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan instinctively grabbed the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow with both hands. The 7 arrows combined into one and turned into a dragon and tiger that devoured the sky. No! The turtle ancestor sage struggled in despair. But how could he escape from the restraint of a paragon? His shell erupted with a monstrous power, but it couldn't stop the sun-shooting arrow. Boom! The arrow pierced through the shell. The endless devouring power directly evaporated the turtle ancestor, but it didn't injure the paragon much. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sun-shooting arrow turned into a rainbow that pierced through the secondary world and entered the heaven-seeking realm. Yi Qinghan wanted to summon the sun-shooting arrows, but it was too late. The paragon's sword pierced through the rainbow and activated the power of the secondary world to destroy everything. Yi Qinghan reached out with both hands. He didn't only mobilize the power of the Heaven Surveyor secondary world, but also the power of the entire primal universe. The 9 cauldrons combined into one and unleashed a virtuous paragon's universal law. Together with the dragon and tiger fighting for supremacy, they crazily slammed into the paragon's immortal sword. Yi Qinghan rubbed his palms together. His merit and paragon power poured out. Today, he didn't only want to kill one paragon, he wanted to kill all of the paragons in the Heaven Surveyor secondary world. Since you're here, let's die together. Chapter 3100. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the secondary universe of the heaven-blessed sacred ground, a boundless sword ray swept for millions of miles. The cauldron carried the primal force of the universe along with the power of a paragon. The clash between the sword and the power of a paragon was enough to destroy the world. However, Yi Qinghan had the power of 3 paragons, so he had an overwhelming advantage in repelling the paragon. Buzz! The immortal sword trembled and was pushed back by the cauldron. It was almost bent. The paragon stared at Yi Qinghan in horror and realized that something was wrong. He immediately asked, "Who are you?" Yi Qinghan swung the cauldron and directly knocked the immortal sword away. The paragon's power poured out as he pressed both palms on the paragon's chest. Boom! The paragon's body was deformed. His already wounded body couldn't withstand this kind of damage. This was a force equal to the combined attacks of Yu Sovereign and Ho Yi, and all of them were aimed at his chest. Puff! The paragon was blown away as his sword left his hand. Whoosh! The little white cloud turned into a whip and directly locked the paragon's wrist. Yi Qinghan forcefully pulled him back and used his knee to smash the paragon's dantian. The paragon's internal organs were about to be shattered. Boom! Boom! Yi Qinghan's fists rained down, causing the paragon to become dizzy. Crack! Crack! The paragon's ribs and skull were all broken. The art of a paragon was exquisite to the extreme and was still able to resist. Its sharp claws tore through the void and directly pierced Yi Qinghan's right chest. At this moment, the multicolored snake suddenly appeared at Yi Qinghan's waist. Its fangs broke through the laws of order and carried the power of the primal universe to bite through the paragon's waist. All of you will die for blocking my path. Boom! Yi Qinghan ignored his injuries and punched through the paragon's throat. At this moment, the undying paragon was like a lamp without oil. Yi Qinghan used several times the power of a paragon to attack the body of the paragon. He was almost using the power of a false ruler to suppress this paragon. Hum! The divine cauldron returned and forcefully trapped the half-dead paragon inside. Bang! The cauldron was sealed. The power inside Yi Qinghan's body poured out and burned the cauldron, wanting to refine this paragon alive. Ada boom boom boom. The divine cauldron appeared on the outside of the cauldron, shockwaves that caused the surrounding space were created by Yu Sovereign after expending countless amounts of vitality could clearly sense it. How could a virtuous paragon and indestructible them? Even the primal universe revealed a murderous glint. You can't do anything to me. And mobilized the power paragon roared inside the cauldron and slammed and the 9-star domain could feel this destructive force. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The pressure inside the cauldron was enough to annihilate all things. Even the soul of a virtuous paragon felt despair. The moment the soul gave up, a virtuous paragon would no longer be immortal. In the face of absolute power, this paragon had no choice but to give up. The temperature inside the cauldron refined everything. The body of the virtuous paragon was destroyed. Whoosh! After destroying the body, Yi Qinghan didn't immediately destroy the soul. Instead, his figure flashed and appeared in the seeking heaven realm. The sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow emitted a blinding light and guided the 7 sun-shooting arrows back. Whoosh! The 7 arrows soared through the air and rushed back into the quiver. The power of the universe rushed in and quickly replenished Yi Qinghan's energy. The southeastern and southwestern regions of the Sky Survey subworld erupted with destructive power the moment Yi Qinghan killed the first virtuous paragon. Sacred Lord Xianlong shot 9 arrows at the same time. The peak of the 10-arrow art destroyed the 4 directions and forced the virtuous paragon out. Once the sword was unleashed, there would be no return until death. Jian Bugui channeled the power of the subworld and directly annihilated the body of the virtuous paragon the moment he appeared. The virtuous paragon didn't even have time to resist before Jian Bugui derived a second sword on the basis of the first sword. The sword rainbow was earth-shattering and directly pierced through the secondary universe. The entire Xiaoyu sacred ground was annihilated. Ah! The virtuous paragon let out a mournful roar and struggled on the verge of death. The sword pierced through the rainbow and directly pierced through Jian Bugui's body. In this moment of lightning and thunder, Sacred Lord Xianlong recalled the 9 arrows and once again erupted with his peak power. The 9 arrows combined into one and turned into 10 arrows that carried monstrous flames as they collided with the virtuous paragon's arrow. Boom! The 10th arrow carried a ball of flame and blocked the virtuous paragon's arrow. Although it only blocked for a moment, it gave Jian Bugui the 3rd sword. Roar! I will not return until the enemy is destroyed. Jian Bugui and his sword became one. The sword channeled the power of the primal universe and directly pierced through the virtuous paragon. Puff! The sword pierced through the virtuous paragon, but the virtuous paragon used a thunderous momentum to destroy the 10 arrows and disperse the 10 arrow art. The sword entered Sacred Lord Xianlong's body. He was only a virtuous paragon, yet he sacrificed his last bit of power to destroy a virtuous paragon. Boom! Sacred Lord Xianlong's body exploded. His flesh and blood were evaporated by the power of the virtuous paragon. He died without a complete corpse. Boom! The imitation immortal bow fell down and the quiver disappeared. The 9 arrows dissipated in all directions and were sucked away by the black hole created by the virtuous paragon. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Jian Bugui was bathed in a river of blood from the virtuous paragon. He crushed the virtuous paragon's body and unleashed a palm strike on the soul. Screech! The soul issued a mournful cry and unleashed its final attack, a soul attack. Boom! The virtuous paragon's soul self-destructed and destroyed 8 secondary universes nearby while directly sweeping Jian Bugui away. Pluff! Jian Bugui spewed out blood and carried the sword toward the southeast. In the southeastern region, the mortal king's sword revealed its power. It was an existence that suppressed the Tao hearts of all living beings. Virtuous paragons were also one of the living beings. Flame King didn't even directly launch a sneak attack. After forcing the virtuous paragon out, he stepped on a crimson flame with the mortal king's sword in hand and brutally killed the wounded virtuous paragon. In less than 2 hours, 4 virtuous paragons in the Heaven Surveyor subworld were destroyed. However, only 1/5 of the realm remained while half of the secondary universes were destroyed. The shockwaves created by the virtuous paragon's power spread far and wide into the heaven-seeking realm. This was a true world-ending battle. The common people were ants, all things were ants, and no one could save them. The flame instantly annihilated an ancestor. Boom! The shockwaves swept across all directions. Not even a blade of grass was lucky enough to be spared. Inside the heaven-seeking realm, Yi Qinghan carried the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow and sun-shooting arrows while holding the divine cauldron. He was refining the virtuous paragon's soul in the primal universe. He couldn't kill the remaining virtuous paragons. Unfortunately, the era was different and their condition was different. Back then, they were heavily wounded by the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. As soon as they rushed out of the suppression, they were ambushed by the 3 great experts of Kuang Manor. For out of 9, at this time, 3 old men walked out of the Jade Court's sacred realm. 3 of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Human Sovereign, Shun Emperor, Sui Sovereign. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, Yellow Emperor, Sovereign Yu, and Sovereign Shi, died. Ho-Yi virtuous paragon sacrificed his last bit of life to Yi Qinghan. The rest had no power left and could only wait for death. Now, only 3 old men were left. Although they no longer had the momentum of the past, they were still mortal kings. The 3 of them came to the heaven-seeking realm with the belief that they would die. Kuang Manor started the battle first and they would follow right after. It was still outside the 9-star field. The other 5 virtuous paragons of the secondary universe all came out. 3 of them had taken away the ruler's energy back then. They had recovered 70 to 80% of their strength and were close to their peak. Their momentum was the strongest. Boom! Yi Qinghan stepped into the 9-star field, followed by Yan Emperor and Jian Bugui. The 3 young paragons looked down on all living beings. Yi Qinghan looked at the 2 behind him. When he saw that Xian Long didn't come, he knew that he was dead. Chapter 3101. Xianlong's death wasn't that sad because Yi Qinghan knew from the start that Xianlong would die as soon as he joined the battle. They couldn't escape the power of a virtuous paragon. Phew, Yi Qinghan breathed out. The only thing he could do now was to destroy the remaining 5 paragons and open up the reincarnation cycle. If he was lucky enough to become a ruler, then he could directly revive some people. Of the 5 paragons, 2 were emaciated and only skin and bones. However, 3 of them were brimming with blood and flesh. This was due to the stolen origin of the ruler's energy granting them a second life. These 5 paragons didn't know Yi Qinghan's identity. They stared at Yi Qinghan, Yan Emperor, and Jian Bugui and could see that they were virtuous paragons at the peak of their power. In a one-on-one fight, none of them would be a match for these 3. A fat man with big ears stared at Yi Qinghan's group and said with a deep voice, "Young man, all the lives in this secondary universe were bestowed by us, yet you dare to kill your ancestors and betray your race?" Yi Qinghan and Yan Emperor sneered and said at the same time, "You are blocking my path." Domineering. These 2 were very similar to each other in their bones. Those who block their path must die. Jian Bugui calmly replied, "You are not ancestors, and our lives were not bestowed by you. All the lives in this world came from the evolution of the universe, not from you virtuous paragons. The lives you bestowed upon us are all in the virtuous paragon world." The 5 paragons revealed a ferocious glint as they stared at Yi Qinghan's group. The Nong sovereign, Sui sovereign, and Emperor Shun came with crutches in their hands. They were old heroes past their prime and had sacrificed everything for the continuation of the universe. In terms of merit, these 5 paragons couldn't compare to them. However, the people in the secondary universe believed in them, and they added fuel to the fire in order to create a ruler's empire for eternal life. This was only a lie driven by their greed. The people in the world were ignorant and didn't understand their intentions. If it wasn't for the 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and Hou-Yi, they might have been able to enslave the entire universe. Yuxian Li Sovereign, are you still obsessed with the universe and want to enslave it and establish your so-called order? The Nong sovereign lamented and asked with a hoarse voice. The leader, Yuxian, had a sinister look in his eyes. He was also one of the people who had obtained a lump of the ruler's origin. His power had almost recovered to its peak. He sneered in disdain. "Nong Huang, you old fogies have taken over the original universe's foundation, but you don't know how to use it. You're really useless. You're so old that you can't even hold a weapon." "Huh?" Yi Qinghan laughed and signaled Yan King and Jian Bugui with his eyes. He then said, "We'll take care of these 3 good-for-nothings. As for the 2 skinny ghosts, I don't want to waste my breath on them. 4 virtuous paragons are already dead, I don't care about 5 more." "What?" Yu Xian waved his hand and a divine weapon appeared in his hand. "Crazy manner, I've underestimated you. If I knew that you killed your ancestors and betrayed the secondary universe, I would have destroyed you the moment I came out. But it's not too late to find out now. Our world of virtuous paragons have all moved out. Your crazy manner won't be able to hold on for long." Yi Qinghan sneered and replied resolutely, "No one in the Kuang Manor is afraid of death. Since I've taken the initiative to declare war on you, I've already prepared myself to be annihilated. Besides, do you think I'm unprepared?" "What?" Yi Qinghan reached out and grabbed 7 sun-shooting arrows. He drew his bow fully and stepped on the primal universe, distorting the Seeking Heaven domain. The entire Seeking Heaven domain took on a spiral shape. The Sword of No Return and the Human Sovereign Sword were unsheathed. They represented the pinnacle of the virtuous paragons while the 5 opponents were not. Even the Nong Sovereign, Sui Sovereign, and Shun Sovereign were not. "What?" The three took the space and the 9 cauldrons separated again. They suppressed the surroundings of the 9-star field to prevent the shockwaves from destroying the universe's foundation. Xiao xiao xiao. The 3 experts were everywhere and their swords overlapped. Boom! The 7 arrows merged into one and destroyed the universe. A new order was about to emerge. Hua! Boom! After combining the 7 arrows into one, the arrow of flame engulfed the center of the 5 paragons with an unstoppable momentum. It didn't target the strongest, Yu Xian. Instead, it targeted a bony old man because it was confident in suppressing the overthrown Yu Xian. Boom! Pang! Even though the skinny old man was on guard, he was still blasted away by the 7 arrows. The sword in his hand danced and clashed with the shooting sun arrows. The arrows were shattered, but the skin between his thumb and index finger was cracked, and even his hand that was holding the sword was trembling. Yi Qinghan was paving the way for the Nong Sovereign and the other paragons. With the 3 of them working together, they would be able to defeat 2 severely wounded paragons. Hua! Yi Qinghan put away the sun-shooting immortal-destroying bow and rushed towards the other bony old man with his bare hands. After sending him flying with a punch, he rushed towards Yu Xian. Yu Xian, let's see how long this old dog can live. Boom! Yi Qinghan stepped on the Seeking Heaven domain and took control of the Origin universe. He joined forces with Supreme Yi and almost reached the level of a pseudo-ruler. With a wave of his hand, the power of the paragons turned into a 7-foot heavy berserk that tore apart the darkness of the Seeking Heaven domain. Xiao xiao xiao. The periphery of the 9-star field was in chaos. 6 against 5. In terms of numbers, Yi Qinghan's group still had the advantage. Yan King and Jian Bugui forced Li Zun's group to separate them. The remaining 2 virtuous paragons were surrounded by the Nong Sovereign's group. Although they were decaying, their battle prowess was still frightening. Their virtuous paragon arts were exquisite and could be used with a wave of their hand. They were far more magnificent and soul-stirring compared to Yi Qinghan's group. However, Yi Qinghan relied on absolute power to suppress them. Boom! Yi Qinghan's saber split the Seeking Heaven domain. The power of the universe was almost solid to the point of being viscous, making it difficult for others to move. The domain of a virtuous paragon was enough to cause virtuous paragons to despair. When such an expert unleashed a world-ending battle, anyone below virtuous paragon would be cannon fodder. Rumble! Yi Qinghan's afterimages had the power to destroy. His power was monstrous. His fists, legs, and saber worked together seamlessly. He forced Yu Xian out of the 9-star region and into the deepest part of the universe, where black holes were everywhere. Yu Xian used his strongest sword technique and almost tore apart the primordial black hole. However, every time he clashed with Yi Qinghan, he was completely defeated. There was no hope of victory. Yi Qinghan wasn't afraid of facing him head-on since he had the power of Ho Yi and Yu Zun inside his body. Although it wasn't a lot, it was still enough to make others despair. A difference of a millimeter could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. Boom! Yi Qinghan kicked Yu Xian into the primordial black hole and rushed in without any hesitation. They fought inside the black hole until it was completely destroyed by the 2. When they came out again, the heaven and earth collapsed. Even some meteorites that had been ravaged by the primordial universe for countless years were cut apart. Chapter 3102. Inside the primordial black hole, the 2 peak virtuous paragons were slaughtering each other. Saber light and sword shadows, the laws of paragons caused the spectators to feel suffocated. The speed of the swords was so fast that the sages couldn't even catch a trace. Boom! Yi Qinghan's saber split the order and sent Yu Xian flying. Even the primordial black hole was torn apart. The 2 appeared in the depths of the heaven-seeking realm, where they couldn't even see their own fingers. This was primordial chaos with no order, laws, or even spirit energy fluctuations. Only paragons could survive and fight in this place. They were using the most fundamental power of the heaven-seeking realm, the power of the universe. Yu Xian was forced to retreat again and again. He didn't even have the slightest chance of defeating Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan, what is your goal? Bush, bush. Yu Xian continued to unleash his shocking rainbow sword. He slightly increased the distance between them, hoping to convince Yi Qinghan. My goal is only to destroy you 9 paragons. Yi Qinghan was extremely powerful with the 7-foot frenzy in his hand. He mobilized the power of the universe to imprison the 8 Desolaces and give birth to laws and laws in the heaven-seeking realm. This was a clear indication that he was infinitely close to becoming a false ruler. Strands of order were being born. The grand Tao that went against the 5 elements covered the heaven-seeking realm, giving the land of primordial chaos a luster. Yu Xian glared at Yi Qinghan and attacked with all his might. His battle experience was much greater than Yi Qinghan's, but the difference in power was too great. In the face of absolute strength, skills were nothing. We have no enmity between us, so why are you going too far? Yu Xian roared. Boom. Whoosh. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed in all directions. At least 10,000 images used different saber arts to slash at Yu Xian. Ha! The depths of the heaven-seeking realm were filled with Yi Qinghan's wild laughter. The great Yu Xian actually dared to say such words. It was truly laughable. Boom! After the laughter, the 10,000 images merged into one to form an attack capable of destroying the universe. The saber split the cosmos as if the primordial chaos had just been born. Countless laws and laws of order shot out from the depths and slashed at Yu Xian. The heaven-seeking frenzy collapsed the universe. Boom! Yu Xian was blown away by this slash. The bones in his hand were broken and his paragon power was blocked. His blood became stagnant as he spewed out a mouthful of essence blood. Even the indestructible heaven-seeking domain was pierced through. Yu Xian, you're ridiculous. When you were strong, you could slaughter all living things. When you were weak, you questioned me for going too far. Then let me ask you, when you massacred the primal universe and caused the deaths of all living things in 9-star zone, did you ask yourself if you were going too far? Yi Qinghan stomped on the flying Yu Xian. His saber was unstoppable as it slashed down once more, knocking Yu Xian into the endless abyss of Qiu Tian domain. The virtuous nether sword pierced through Qiu Tian's domain, causing flames to erupt from the friction, but it couldn't stop him from losing. Yu Xian angrily roared, "We are virtuous paragons and can become rulers with a wave of our hands. How can we be compared to ants?" Boom! Yi Qinghan looked at the struggling Yu Xian and pierced his saber through Qiu Tian domain. His eyes were filled with disdain as he looked down on Yu Xian. "In my eyes, you're not a virtuous paragon, only an ant that I can casually slaughter. Thus, you have no right to ask me if I'm going too far. Yu Xian, I'll show you the power of a false ruler." Yi Qinghan's powerful soul fused with sovereign Yi. At least 3 strands of ruler's energy gathered in his sea of consciousness. The ruler's origin energy was the ruler's order. As long as one could comprehend it, they would be able to dominate all laws of order. No order could transcend. At this moment, the little white cloud gave up on strengthening Yi Qinghan and instead accompanied the ruler's energy. The ruler's order actually took the initiative to recognize Yi Qinghan. In the blink of an eye, the primal universe became a huge net with each node representing a different law of order. Condense. Yi Qinghan frowned and pointed a finger in Yu Xian's direction. Caging heaven's order appeared in the surrounding space and chaos, firmly restraining Yu Xian in that space. A ruler's domain. It surpassed the limits of a virtuous paragon's control. Although Yi Qinghan wasn't a ruler, he could still control Yu Xian's fate. This was enough. But Yi Qinghan's 10 fingers formed a seal and forcefully pulled Yu Xian, who was struggling in the abyss, towards him. Yi Qinghan's fingers turned into palms. His palms were filled with ruler's order, capable of dominating everything. Boom! His palms pushed forward rapidly and pressed directly on Yu Xian's chest as if they were twigs. Yu Xian was horrified. He could feel the ruler's order shooting out from Yi Qinghan's palms, forcibly suppressing the virtuous paragon's order within his body. His vitality was rapidly being wiped out. Yi Qinghan, I am a virtuous paragon recognized by the universe. You dare kill your ancestor? Yu Xian roared in despair. Yi Qinghan's ruler's order forcefully entered Yu Xian's body, directly destroying the order within it. You are a virtuous paragon recognized by the primal universe, but I am different. I don't need the universe's recognition, but the primal universe needs my recognition. Otherwise, I will forcibly dissolve the order and lay down a new order to rebuild the laws. Turned into fists and his wrists moved back an inch. Then he rotated his palms and attacked Yu Xian's heart. Boom! Yu Xian's heart completely shattered. The order within his body was scattered, and his eyes were filled with despair. The virtuous paragon's order he controlled no longer listened to him. Even his fate seemed to be under Yi Qinghan's control. This is the power of a false ruler. Yu Xian looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. He didn't expect a junior to reach this step and have the power to make him despair. Yes, this is the power of a false ruler. It comes from the bones of virtuous paragon Yu Zun and the insights of virtuous paragon Ho Yi. Then, the ruler's origin transformed into a human form to communicate with me. I have obtained 30% of the ruler's order, which is enough to deal with an ant like you. Whatever you can destroy, I can restore. Yi Qinghan's eyes shone brightly. His fist technique evolved into a palm technique, but this time, it directly cut into Yu Xian's body and tore it apart. Whoosh! Yu Xian's body erupted with a monstrous divine light. Ah! Yu Xian roared in despair. He felt all the essence within his body being forcefully taken away by Yi Qinghan. No, I won't die. Yu Xian screamed in despair. After living for so many years, how could he be willing to die? Yi Qinghan forcefully devoured Yu Xian's life force and origin and coldly replied, "That depends on whether I agree to let you live or not." Yu Xian's body, which was originally brimming with vitality, dried up once more. The sword in his hand fell from his hand and fell into the abyss. Boom! After Yi Qinghan devoured 90% of Yu Xian's origin, he evaporated Yu Xian's body with one palm. Yu Xian's flesh and blood turned into nothingness. It was as if Yu Xian had never existed. Yi Qinghan looked at the endless abyss and didn't go to take the divine weapon. Yu Xian's traces should no longer appear. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan turned and left, rushing towards the 9-star realm. Chapter 3103. Outside the 9 stars domain, the divine cauldron laid down a divine array to prevent the aftermath of the battle between the virtuous paragons from destroying the foundation of the universe. The foundation of the original universe was the 9-star sector. The original universe continued to extend, creating countless secondary universes. If the order of the original universe collapsed, all the secondary universes would be destroyed. Qi Yan let out a long hiss and broke the order. Li Zun was suppressed by Yan Emperor. Qi Yan's forelimbs broke the defense and kicked Li Zun away. The Flame Emperor and Qi Yan cooperated seamlessly and were extremely powerful. Li Zun was defeated, but the virtuous paragon's vitality was limitless. Even the Flame Emperor couldn't forcefully suppress him. Boom! Li Zun had been forcefully sent flying countless times. His combat power was getting weaker and weaker. His qi, blood, and vitality that he had worked so hard to recover were destroyed once again. His body dried up. His ferocious aura filled the surroundings as he rushed into the depths of Qiutian region. The sword of the human sovereigns suddenly split into 5. The 5 celestial swords of heaven, earth, human sovereign, and reincarnation surrounded revered Li. The great Tao of the human sovereign actually crossed the Qiu-Tian region. A new order was actually born under his divine will. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Poochie! In the blink of an eye, at least 10,000 sword shadows pierced through Li Zun's defense. Qi Yen evolved into his fourth state. The flames all over his body were like the scorching sun, burning the chaos. His four limbs twisted in the beginning of the chaos. Together with the Emperor's sword, he kicked Li Zun to death. Li Zun screamed. This was the second paragon on the verge of death. Immortal and indestructible, they had no fear at all and had no compassion. However, once they fell into a hopeless situation, their despair was far more miserable than that of ordinary people. The Yen Emperor saw the sword energy swept the nine-colored and directly severed the paragon's waist, instantly wiping out 30% of his vitality. The human sovereign sword force was unstoppable, shattered his upper body, the heavens, and disappeared into the Yen Emperor's path. Huang used all of his strength and almost used his life to shatter his lower body. Union pierced through Li Zun's body. A sword ray was wrapped around his soul, and his body was destroyed. Paragon was completely annihilated. The body of a virtuous paragon was torn to pieces and had no chance of defeating the Yen Emperor. The shockwaves at the peak of his power, and even the divine cauldron was blasted away. Death, a portion of the power entered the crippled the battlefield and joined the Gnome King's battle. To countless creatures. The Gnome King was old and powerless. Rushed out from even when facing the bony paragon. He could only keep the protection of the original universe. Otherwise, the Flame Imperial Sword's momentum was like a rainbow. Been destroyed. The Doomsday Battle was just that cruel. Seniors, guard the 9-star domain. Leave these two to me and Taoist Jian Bugui. Yen Emperor wielded his sword and moved forward, pressing down on the other severely injured sage. Nong Sovereign, Shun Sovereign, and Sui Sovereign took a few steps back. They exchanged a glance and smiled in relief. They had dedicated their lives to the survival of the universe, and with Kuang Manor's replacement, they would be able to live a much easier life in the future. Jian Bugui's undying aura forced the other sage to retreat step by step. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, the other sage actually had thoughts of escaping. Roar! At this time, a sun-shooting arrow capable of shattering the universe came from the void and directly pierced through the virtuous paragon's heart. Blood splattered everywhere as a miserable scream resounded. His body fell down on the spot. Whoosh! The sun-shooting arrow didn't stop there. It pierced through the Qiu Heaven realm and disappeared without a trace. Yi Qinghan has returned. He killed that virtuous paragon with one move. The 9 unkillable virtuous paragons back then were all annihilated in one day. It was unfortunate that they had revived in the wrong era. If they had revived 10,000 years earlier, Kuang Manor would have been able to destroy the original universe. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors would have fallen, and no one would be able to go against their will. Unfortunately, Kuang Manor was able to grow. Yi Qinghan stepped into the battlefield with a heavy hand. His expression was solemn as he swept his gaze across the battlefield and flew towards the ancient immortal subworld. At this moment, the ancient immortal subrealm was also affected by this apocalyptic battle. Even though only 5 of the 9 virtuous paragons' worlds were mobilized, this was still a terrifying number. Without the participation of any virtuous paragons, this was enough to destroy the world. Kuang Manor had an army of 50 million with the support of the Northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom and the other subsidiary powers. This was an army of more than 100 million. The previous generation of Kuang Manor was mobilized to form a formation. The alchemy god elder followed the order of the first generation sacred lord and mobilized all the experts above the ancestor realm in the ancient immortal subrealm to help Kuang Manor and Northern Xiong defend their territories. All of Kuang Manor's forces were gathered in the north. The ancient massacre god, the assassins, the 1st and 2nd division of the Heaven Conquest Camp, the private army, and the inner and outer sect armies were all present. Even in the face of a force several times stronger than before, Kuang Manor's cohesiveness actually increased. Chen Bei and the rest of the younger generation from Ho Yi's world were all here. Seeing the power of Yi Qinghan's insane mansion, they couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. This kind of person was only pretending to be crazy, but they had recklessly run into him. How lucky they were to be alive. The two armies were rapidly approaching. The older generation of Quang Manor, the second and third generation of Quang Manor all stood at the front, listening to the orders of Chess Saint and Void Saint Chess. No one was afraid of death. Their steps were firm and the earth trembled. Boom! The vanguard was the first to clash. It was a battle between sages. The army formed a formation to block the shockwaves. Including Qian Yixue, Xing Xian, and Xiao Yu, there were more than 10 experts from Quang Manor. There were less than 50 sages in the virtuous Paragon world, but they were fighting 3 times the number of sages. Sages were constantly falling from the sky. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven used his turtle shell to move around. With his speed, he could almost instantly kill those of the same realm without any defense. This old man has endured for so many years. Finally, it's time to be free. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven flashed through the air, leaving afterimages everywhere. The experts in the virtuous Paragon world were terrified and didn't have the heart to fight. Yen Yunbei held the Fang dagger and killed almost all of them in one blow, not giving them any chance to retaliate. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Gu Qingyu, Lin Wutian, Li Peiza, Hualing Tian, Yi Chenxing, Heaven's Equal Monkey King, Shi Ge, and the others released their final radiance. It was a battle to the death. Rivers of blood flowed and dyed the sky red. Xing Xian, Qian Yixue, and Xiao Yu had no way out. They could only bet on Quang Manor's victory. The situation wasn't good for Quang Manor. Chess Saint looked at the big picture and stared at the left flank. Suddenly, he waved the flag in his hand and the war drums rumbled. The conquest camp and the ancient massacre god worked together to forcefully tear apart the battle between the sages and pulled 8 of them into the formation.